Magandang umaga po sa lahat. Nasa huling yugto na ang ating 60th UP National Writers Workshop, ang ikalawang taon ng palihang nasa kaligiran ng COVID-19. Marami tayong bitbit sa pag-uumpisa ng mga workshop sessions noong Lunes, mga bagaheng naibukas sa mga talakayan at naibahagi sa mga kasama sa Zoom at sa mga nanonood sa live stream. Maraming hindi mapangalanang pakiramdam sa pagtatapos ng isang linggong talakayan. Palaging may ganito sa bawat pagtatapos. Sa huling dalawang session, haharapin natin ang pananalinghaga sa panahon ng pandemya at kawalang katiyakan. Patungo sa paghabi ng mundo at hinaharap may bakas ng pag-asa at pagtitiwala. Makakasama natin ang ating workshop panelist na si Gemino Abad upang ipakilala at talakayin ang mga tula sa Quiet Pandemonium ni Mark Adrian Ho.
Okay. As I said earlier, it is my misfortune that I have not met Adrian in person. As far as I can remember, my memory is very poor. But in any case, all I know about Adrian is what I have read in our own manuscript for the workshop. And I assume that our fellows have read that also. No? All I can say is that our workshop is a fellowship of writers, and that fellowship, like family, is an authentic image of democracy because there is respect for each one's own self or being and each one's view or reading of anything. No? I have much to say about Adrian's poetics, about which I am in complete agreement, actually. But I would like to know from Adrian if my interpretation of his poetics is correct. uh, but in any case, this particular session uh, is not for my comments so much as for the comments from our fellows and our fellow panelists. In any case, Adrian and I, in our consultation, agreed that we can email each other. So there may not be so much need for further comments from me on his poetics. No? In any case, just to proceed directly to the concern of this session right now, let us have Adrian's own view on the about writing, about poetry. No, in fact, in that regard, uh, what I am a summary of Adrian's poetics is in one paragraph on page 322. Poetry is the poet's attempt at apprehending his or her anxieties by likewise apprehending language and distilling that anxiety to its purest sense and shape on the page, etc., etc. But if you read that, that's only one paragraph there. That is a summing up of his poetics, I think. And that is actually what I meant by work of imagination, work of language and work of imagination working in concert. That is the creative work. That is the imaginative work. Yeah. The work of language and work of imagination. That sums it up. Yeah. By the way, I'd like to add that my basic reference when I write is Webster's Collegiate Dictionary of English, and also uh, Roget's International Thesaurus. That's why if we are serious about Filipino as a national language, like most writers in Filipino, they're serious about Filipino as a national language, and I agree with them. No, I want to learn Filipino myself, although it may be too late now. However, what is important, especially in our education system, is not only a collegiate dictionary of Filipino into English, not only into Filipino but also into English, and also a thesaurus. The etymology of those words in the Filipino Tagalog Filipino language. Yeah, that would be a very good basic reference for any writer in Filipino. Yeah. So anyway, let's go back to business right now. By the way, I want to add, my, by temperament, uh, I am not used to what I really want personally is a face-to-face, person-to-person engagement with the poem or the short story. But of course, we cannot have that in a Zoom meeting. That's why I thought it would be very nice if we can email each other, and then I can, face to face, so to speak, email to email. Anyway, let's go right down to business. Let's have the comments of the other panelists and fellows on the Adrian's work. I have my own comments, but I can reserve that for the end, if that is possible. Yeah. So there. Okay. Adrian, it's your turn. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your introduction, Sir Jimmy. Um, may we have the slide, please? Yes, thank you. So the title of my presentation is Why We Should Write About Mental Health. No, just a disclaimer. Para po sa mga nanonood na sensitibo sa mga paksa na may kinalaman sa mental health, baka po kasi matrigger kayo, mas maganda po sana siguro na i-skip din na muna itong presentation na ito at baka nga matrigger kayo. Maraming salamat sa pag-unawa at pasensya na po. Next slide, please. So my first book, Angst, is a collection of poems on anxiety. Thesis ko siya sa DLSU. Ginawa kong paksa ng thesis ko yung anxiety dahil gusto ko mas makilala at maunawaan pa ang nature ng anxiety. Bilang meron akong anxiety condition. I chose poetry because I thought it was the most suitable genre for me to apprehend anxiety through language performance on the page. Next slide, please. So in working on my thesis, I was able to discover my own poetics at sa dalawang paragraph, ito po yung aking poetics. No? Poetry is a poet's attempt at apprehending his or her anxieties by likewise apprehending language and distilling it down to its purest sense and shape on the page. A poem is the poet's anxiety captured and curated into being through his or her negotiation with language. Next slide, please. Kaunting background naman po, noong 2013, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. It shocked me for quite a while, no? Kasi nalaman ko na matagal na pala akong may anxiety ever since I was a kid, pero hindi ko alam. Before the diagnosis, naririnig o nababasa ko lang yung word na anxiety, pero hindi ko talaga alam kung ano yung ibig sabihin nun. I never bothered to look it up. No, so ang hugot ko nga dun sa diagnosis ko, sana pala nalaman ko siya ng mas maaga pa, no, when I was younger. para natutunan ko kung paano siya i-manage ng mas maaga at hindi na umabot sa punto na nagkaroon ako ng depression. Dahil din sa diagnosis na yon, I was overwhelmed. Things felt surreal. Kailangan kong ilabas yung mga nararamdaman ko, yung mga iniisip ko. No? So nagsulat ako ng essay tungkol sa karanasan ko. Rappler published the essay. Over the years, marami akong mga natanggap na email mula sa mga nakabasa ng article na yon. Actually, hanggang last year, may natanggap akong email. May mga nagtatanong kung paano ko nalaman yung anxiety ko, may nanghihingi ng contact information ng psychiatrist ko, may nagtatanong about medications, or kung paano ako nakakapagtrabaho kapag meron akong anxiety attack. May mga nagsabi na walang nakakaalam sa pamilya nila na may anxiety sila kasi natatakot silang kung ano yung iisipin ng family member, so hindi sila humihingi ng tulong. Pero may isang very memorable na email ako natanggap mula sa isang nanay na nakipag-usap sa akin or nakiusap sa akin kung pwede ko raw i-email yung anak niya kasi may pinagdaraanan at hindi nag-open up yung anak niya sa kanya. At pakiwari niya, baka mag-open up yung anak niya sa akin kasi may pareho kami ng pinagdadaanan ng anak niya. So, nag-email ako dun sa bata or teenager na siya. Unfortunately, hindi siya sumagot sa aking email. No? So yung mga ganong instances, yung mga email na yon, na-realize ko na maraming may ganitong problema sa mental health at nangangailangan ng tulong. Pero marami ang hindi alam kung ano yung gagawin. Hindi kasi sapat yung pagkalat ng impormasyon tungkol sa mental health. No? So doon ko na-realize na, you know, as a writer, I should write about mental health. Next slide, please. So noong 2016, itinanghal sa Virgin Love Fest yung dula ko na Run Margaran bilang staged reading. Final output ko ito sa playwriting workshop ko sa DLSU under attorney Nicholas Pichay. No? The play is a satire on showbiz and politics at ang lead character ay si Marga na isa siyang multi-awarded actress pero laos na siya. May mga problema sa kanyang pamilya at sa kanyang career. She suffers from anxiety, depression, and she has obsessive-compulsive tendencies. Comedy yung dula, pero towards the ending, dark yung ending actually. Kasi ang nangyari, iniwan siya ng mga mahal niya sa buhay or ng mga pinagkakatiwalaan niya dahil nga sa kalagayan niya or sa kanyang behavior. No? Next slide, please. Noong sumunod na taon, itinanghal din sa Virgin Love Fest yung tula ko na Sincerity Bikers Club. Tungkol ito sa grupo ng mga bikers na nabulabog ang mundo dahil ang bago nilang member ay involved sa tokhang. Ang tula ay hindi directly about mental health. Pero may isang karakter na si Luella, siya yung asawa niya ay addict, excuse me, na tokhang at napatay. No? May isang eksena kung saan she humanizes her husband dahil nabansagan nga at nahusgahan ito bilang addict. No? So gusto niya iparating sa mga kasamahan niya na mabuting tao yung asawa niya. Yun nga lang, lulong siya sa droga. Sinulat ko itong dula na ito in response to the news na ito yung mga panahon na gabi-gabi ay patayan yung nakikita natin sa news dahil nga sa tokhang. No, dahil sa tokhang, ang tingin ng marami sa mga addict ay kriminal. Sa iba, okay lang na basta na lang sila ikulong kasi addict sila. Yung iba nga, okay lang din na patayin sila kasi addict sila. Hindi alam ng marami or hindi nare-realize ng marami na addiction is actually a mental health problem. Addiction can be treated, addicts can be rehabilitated. No? Hindi pagkulong sa mga addict ang permanenteng solusyon. At lalong-lalo na, hindi solusyon yung patayin sila. Next slide, please. Noong 2017 din, I co-wrote a screenplay with Benedict Mike, who's a friend of mine and a former colleague. Isa siyang filmmaker. Si Benedict, meron siyang ex na nagpakamatay at may mga mahal sa buhay siya na may pinagdaraan ng depression. Gusto niyang gumawa ng pelikula na direktang tinatakal ang depression at suicide. Alam niyo yung karanasan ko So he approached me para buuin yung kwento. We met, we brainstormed, we conceptualized, hanggang sa naisulat namin yung first draft. It actually went through several revisions, so nakalimang drafts yata siya. Kakaiba at experimental ang structure ng kwento. Hindi siya linear, pabalik-balik between the past and the present, at may mga voiceovers. No? Ito yung napili naming forma ng pelikula kasi gusto naming makapture yung pinagdaraanan ng main character, si Camila. No? Isa siyang single mom na nawalan ng anak na babae dahil sa suicide, si Faith. So she's coming to terms with the loss of Faith, yung anak niya, and in the process, she herself spirals down into depression and even attempts to end her life. Inilako namin itong script sa iba't ibang producers, definitely more than 5, pero rejected siya lagi. May mga iba na gusto yung kwento at may mga ilan na gusto nila kasi gawing mas plotty at mas exciting yung kwento, no? Kasi character driven yung Keeping Faith. Gusto nila parang 13 Reasons Why. Hindi kami pumayag kasi hindi yun ang vision at intent ng pelikula, no? So for us it was very frustrating, but until now ay sinusubukan pa rin naming ilako yung script, no? Actually kinonsulta namin yung script sa isang psychiatrist na ang specialization ay suicide, no? She was part of the UP Health Services back then. Binahagi niya sa amin yung kaalaman niya, yung research niya, yung karanasan niya sa pagka-counsel ng mga estudyante sa UP na may pinagdaraan ng mental health issues. At nasabi rin niya sa amin na ang pangunahing problema sa usaping mental health ay stigma. Maraming natatakot magsalita tungkol sa pinagdaraanan nila, natatakot magpakonsulta sa psychiatrist, natatakot humingi ng tulong kasi takot silang mabansagang baliw, no? So ang nangyayari, kinikimkim lang nila at sinasarili yung kanilang struggle. Hanggang sa ang iba actually ay umaabot pa sa suicide. Next slide please. Aside from writing about mental health, I try as much as possible to incorporate the topic of mental health in my teaching. No, when I first read Bienvenido Santos's The Day the Dancers Came, that story stayed with me. It was my first encounter with the Filipino short story that tackles the psychological aspects of the Filipino diaspora experience. Ganun din yung Sunday Beauty Queen ni Baby Ruth Valderrama. It's not exactly about mental health, pero meron siyang kamalayan tungkol sa psychological effects of loneliness and homesickness to Filipino domestic helpers in Hong Kong. Ang kita-kita ni Sigrid and Andrea Bernardo, comedy at rom-com siya, pero magandang tingnan din from a psychological perspective. Kasi yung character ni Empoy dito ay naging lasinggero at naging taong grasa. Yung character ni Alex De Rossi, nagkakaroon ng temporary blindness kapag siya ay stressed, no? Kasi kapag usapang OFW, lagi natin tinitignan siya from the in terms of economics or politics or post-colonialism, pero hindi masyadong napapag-usapan yung psychological effects of migration of Filipinos abroad na I think dapat nating mas pag-usapan pa kasi marami tayong mga kakilala at kababayang OFWs at hindi madali yung dinaranas nila sa ibang bansa. Kasi kahit homesickness and loneliness can spiral down into anxiety and depression. Next slide, please. I appreciate works like Dr. Jyoti Tabula's anthology, From the Eyes of a Healer, no? An anthology of medical anecdotes. Kwento ito ng mga doktor, nurses, at iba pang healthcare workers. No? Accounts from the perspective of care providers. Next slide, please. I also appreciate Dr. Marjorie Evasco teaching pathography and literature in our graduate program sa Department of Literature sa DLSU. She gives talks and conducts workshops also on pathography and writing. Next slide, please. I appreciate trauma studies, disability studies, and MAD studies. Ang isinusulong ng MAD studies ay mga naratibo ng mga karanasan ng mismong mga sufferers. Those who are suffering from a mental health condition, those who have survived. The MAD study seeks to offer a space for these voices, no, to create an alternative system of understanding mental health conditions because psychiatry alone may not be enough. Why should we write about mental health? Because we need to. Telling our stories about our struggles helps spread information and spark conversations about mental health. And we need this in order to fight the stigma. We need to normalize talking about mental health. No, so if there's an opportunity to speak and write about it, I take the opportunity. Kasi baka makatulong. Next slide, please. So this brings me to my next project, which is Quiet Pandemonium. It's a collection of poems. No, it's not directly about mental health, but it's still very much rooted in anxiety. Next slide, please. It's rooted in anxiety kasi yung panahon natin ngayon, nasa panahon tayo ng pandemya. No? We live in very traumatic times. The intention of the collection is to explore amid all of our battles, quiet pandemonium, and how it surfaces and erupts in our personal lives. No? Ang specific goal ko is to write poems that particularize or granularize our individual and collective experience of quiet pandemonium. Next slide, please. So some of the themes that I would like to touch on in the collection, obviously, pandemic, society and politics, science and spirituality, because we need science at this time. We need to cling to our faith at this time. I'm also interested in post-humanism and post-anthropocentrism because nature is literally shaking us up at this time, no? So that we would start taking better care of the planet. Next slide, please. So this is just a rundown of the poems in the collection, a short summary lang. Time for Dogs offers a proposition. What if we let the dogs lead and humans take a back seat so that they can show us how to do humanity? In When the World Turns Black, the persona advises the reader how to respond to a distressed child who witnesses the clouds turning gray before rainfall. Emotional granularity discusses how poets respond to a recent development in neuroscience. Next slide, please. In Reality Check, the persona resorts to his way of grounding or earthing, which is calling his mother and having a conversation with her when he feels that the world is shaking. Reality Show dramatizes, using an intrusive persona, the killing of Sonia and Frank Gregorio by cop Jonel Nuesca. To the pigeon who's found a home in my balcony, the persona establishes a connection with a pigeon amidst a pandemic. Next slide, please. In Spectacle, the spirits of those who died from COVID refuse to accept their fate. In The Pillow, a woman is repulsed after discovering that the pillow she bought from a street peddler is full of used face masks. Labor Day juxtaposes the challenges faced by two kinds of workers, the carpenter and the poet. In Tenderness, the persona agonizes over the threat of losing his mother to COVID. Next slide, please. So these are some of the questions that I ask myself about the poems. Number one, and perhaps you might be able to help me in answering some of these questions. Number one, is there newness in the poems? If none, how may I infuse the poems with newness? Two, what can still be strengthened in terms of rhetoric and technique? Three, do the shape and sound of the poems work? Four, is the intent to granularize the experience of quiet pandemonium fully realized? And lastly, what other themes may be included in the collection? Next slide, please. That is the end of my presentation. Maraming salamat po sa pakikinig.
We would like to call back Sir Hemino Abad
Yes.
for the discussion portion. Thank you.
Okay. So, who is first? Let's call on him or her.
Si Sir Vim daw po, Sir Jimmy.
Oh, sige. Vim. Ikaw, Vim.
Yes. Sir Vim?
Hello, sorry po. Kala ko mahaba pa yung usapan eh. Teka lang. Teka lang po. Una sa lahat siguro pagbati kay Adrian. No? Nung sinisimulan ko yung pagbasa ng tula, una kong pupurihin siguro yung pagkakaayos no? nung tula mula sa una hanggang ika-10. Kaya nagwawala yung camera ko pa. Okay. Dahil sa maganda na nabanggit ni Adrian yung gamit niya sa tula no bilang therapy no kasi hindi mo lingid sa yung kaalaman na naging thesis ko rin yan sa MA ko at ginamit naman nito ng mga cancer survivors no. Ginamit namin ng tula bilang kasi naggagaling naman yung teorya sa parang diseases are caused by non-expression of emotion. Kasi kung titignan mo yung itsura halimbawa ng cancer survivors, para din silang cancer cells, no? Tight at saka inward, no? Palagi parang sasabog na pistoning, sabi nga ni Sigmund Freud, no? So, ang solusyon is expressive arts therapy. So, and one of them is creative writing, in particular poetry. So, kanina, hinanap ko sa mga tayutay o tropes mo, yung mga parang mga signals na doon sa, pasensya na Adrian, ha? So doon sa una, halimbawa sa Time for Dogs, no, nakita natin dyan yung leash, no, yung teeter to their guards, yung tails would wag in glee, yung bark words, vaccines at streets, no, yung mga ganun, fur, transparency, how to do humanity, yung quaking, yung nga pala, no? May moment ka ron on tremors and earthquakes, no? So, nakikita ko na related do sa last poem na quivering, no? So, yung running around in circles sa number 2, when world turns black. So, pant, choke up, wonder why, dimming light, no? Take him in, soak in the rain, touch in the murk, black death, no? Time dries tears. Ang ganda nito. Run in circles again, no? Inulit mo 'yan. So nakikita ko yung mga images na reflecting anxiety, you know, remembering nothing, no? Sa emotional granularity, yung realign eyes, recalibrate mind, stretch your vocabulary, break down experience, sharpen emotional intelligence, alienation, no? Na makikita ko ito sa poem number 10. Tama ba, Adrian? No? Parang foreshadowing, breakdown experience, sharpen, pulverize into, ganito to, assorted specks of I'm feeling crappy, no? Pound tears into granules of despair, yun, yung mga words na yan, crumb taste of something else, ang ganda rin ng line na yan. Longing, ito, makikita natin kung saan nanggagaling mamaya, heartbreak, bitter burst, at defeat, no? Sa reality check, ito yung sa tingin ko yung parang nasa mid part ng collection mo na binigay lang naman sa atin. Yung reality check, parang foreshadowing, some nights, ito pala yung world shaking, loss of stability. Nakita ko yung commonality, yung mother image, no? Listen to her voice, kept reminding me, stress, nightmares, the watering plants, peace lily, no? Related sa entire collection, no? Purifying air, jug of water, na life. Reality show, nakita ko yung attitude mo dito, I don't care, locked down his son, di ba? Shielding him from scuffle, stone simmering under the sun, point blank, mother and son, nakita ko rin, mamaya, lalabas lagi ito. Listen to the lull, fall to the ground, scream, what would have you done? Guard their peace, love or rage. And nakikita ko sa entire title mo yan. Kicks them off the cliff. Ay, mahalaga to, no? Gusto kong balikan nga to, parang merong may suicide ideation, di ba? Tayo nakikita. Justice drifts in the air, dispersing like blood on the... Hindi mo naman kailangan sagutin, Adrian. Ito lang yung nakikita ko mga triggers, no? Drain the tragedy out, no? So to the pigeon who's found a home in balcony, nakikita ko naman yung sarili mo dun sa mga kalapati, no? Akin lang naman to, maaari akong mali. Feels affronted, slighted, stuck, keep us sane for months, no? Pag feed mo, poor midway through your meal. Ang ganda no? Comfort in the ability to exercise, release, ito rin. Shut, survival. Community keeps them, spirit reverses wrath in virulent times. No? Grace endures, quirks dancing, wounded wings. Itong gusto ko yung Peter na could remind us of the denial, pero yung Peter, we can use Peter as a verb, no? Which means to fade. Sir Jimmy, ito ang hilig nyo, to decrease gradually before coming to an end. No? Ito lang parang warning sign. No? So ito naman, ito rin denial din. Number 7, all about denial. Refusing, ghost, storm, mob, anthem of remembering, bodies fell, grandiose ode to life, howling unison, isn't a plea but a coup. No? Quiet, quick death. Ito rin, ang ganda. Illusion, magicians, not just trick, sinabi mo pa, cruel. Di ba, Adrian? Specific. Pillow, ito maganda rin ito. Yung una nakikita ko, political, going to personal. Pero itong pillow, Adrian, nag-succeed ka, political as personal. No? Ang ganda. Hindi ko inaitatanong kung fictive yung single, di ba? Yung single blessed woman, di ba? Yung quarantining, stuffy, old single woman, overdue pedicure, selling comfort, cushiony bed companion, ganda nun, tosses in turns in bed, fed up, open an inept pillow with a knife from the gush, use face mask, ghost pleading, a seance, screams in horror, cursing, pillows, not just joke, ano, pillow to crack joke, ano, pero sick joke, no? Swallow guilt. Ito ang number 9, yung Labor Day, Sir Jimmy, ito naman yung nakita kong Ars Poetica mo, no? Single breath afflicts everyday ends in a cliff. Nandito na naman yung cliff, no, Adrian? Hindi mo kailangan sagutin, pero kung okay lang, makakatulong. Everyday unfinished partition, ito yun. Wall, half done, scantily shattered, factoid, toil. Ang ganda nito, nagawa ka ng acronym. Time off in lieu, no? Sleeping hours, grinding over objective correlative ni T.S. Eliot. Work-life balance na are a means to survive, no? Itong carpenter aspires to read poetry reminds me of Mark Smith, no, who invented poetry slam. Kasi si Mark Smith, no, na featured sa Slam Nation, is a construction worker, and their therapy is to perform on bars, bistros, and beer houses in Chicago. Eventually, without knowing that he'll be leading the movement called Poetry Slam, or what we know now as spoken word, no? So maganda 'yon. So ayaw ko kung sadya 'yon, pero dito ginamit mo carpenter, no? Pero 'yun ang nakita ko kasi nakita natin yung down to earth, no? Look or take on poetry. True resentment, ito pa yung Maslow's hierarchy of need, from basic to self-actualization. Poet learns through ropes of carpentry and theater, clutch, dance, and eke out. Ito ang pinakagusto ko. Number 10 na po ako, Sir Jimmy Pasesa. Ito nakikita ko, ito yung ugat ng trauma. Tama ba, Adrian? Sa akin lang to, no? So ito yung nagsimula ang lahat dito sa bata na ang ganda nitong metaphor mo, yung hands holding in the middle of the road, squeezing to let you know I'm here, no? Locked hands. That day I placed my faith on tenderness. That time you lost me. Nandito na yung trauma na nakikita ko. Got swallowed by the mob. So I let go, let the stampede carry me. No, ganun ka-traumatic yung experience. Out of the store, no, pushing him away. Found me sitting quiet. Thus, di ba? Quiet pandemonium, no? So in a corner, just outside the fire exit, ang ganda ng image no? Ng imagism. Grabbed by the hand but didn't double squeeze. Ang ganda-ganda nito, Adrian. Wondered why instead of you wrap your arms tight around me, but when you found me, you were trying to make up for your absence, momentary absence. So doon sa tingin ko nagsimula yung lamat. No? Double squeeze on my hand wasn't enough for you to say sorry for losing me. Only your arms around me could. We went home, became a lost and found story, finding you, waiting for you to find me. Ang ganda. Did you long that day still feel the tightness of that hug? Until now, yun yung effect ng trauma. Kasi kahit ang puso natin o isip natin ay may muscle memory rin, no? So hanggang ngayon, you told me not to visit ang ganda nito, gustong-gusto ko to, Adrian. You told me not to visit you for Mother's Day. Frivolous, dread, negative, celebrate, cook, check your addendums, science and sense, to stand beside you in the middle of the road. Ito, recurring yung image mo, no? Yung loss, no? Or lost, no? Getting lost. Or alienation, no? Wait for the walk, ganda nito. Wait for the walk sign to go green. Wait, we must. We keep on waiting, quiet in this corner. My hands feel like reaching out. Enough losing, enough finding, try to keep them still. But my hands quiver, raring to let you know I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, so Adrian, would you like to comment on that? Adrian.
Do I comment now, sir, or should I wait for everybody to speak?
Oh, sige. Maybe so. Sige. We will go to the next speaker or commentator.
Si Mary Ann po, sir.
Okay,
Good morning
Mary
po.
Ann.
Good morning, Sir Jimmy. Good morning, Adrian and everyone. Salamat, Adrian, for submitting this to the workshop kasi I think this is the kind of work that needs to be out there. Even during this time that people have more awareness of the importance of having mental health, marami pa rin nagbi-victim blame. And it's a reality talaga that it's so hard to navigate the world right now. And when you have an anxiety, it's like you have that makes it even more difficult for us who have anxiety to navigate the already difficult world. What I like most about your collection is that there is a sense of awareness that anxiety can be caused, and most often is caused by a situation na talagang oppressive naman. Pero I was looking for how you identified the possible yung mga nakakapag exacerbate ng anxiety and possibly even what caused the anxiety is yung there is an abandonment. Kasi doon sa Time for Dogs, parang may sinasabi ko doon na there is an abandonment by an incompetent state na who really doesn't care. Kasi aside from incompetent, siya apathetic pa yung state na yon. So because of that abandonment, we're all in this deep mess. So that really needs to be said. So thank you so much for this collection. Meron lang akong mga tanong. When siguro not just for Adrian but for everyone else as well, pero syempre si Adrian yung pinakaunang makakasagot nito kasi ito yung reality niya. Napag-isipan mo ba, when do we draw the line on using poetry for healing versus using poetry as a shield? Do we even need to question that? Or should healing and shield, are those functions of poetry both valid? So that's my first question. My second question is, do you think, kasi hindi naman lahat ng may anxiety nakaka-articulate, and some people, when they try to write about their anxiety, mas na-anxious sila. So my second question is, do you think, in your opinion, can someone who is not actually suffering from anxiety write about the experience of having anxiety in an authentic way? Kung mag-e-effort ba siya talaga to help people with anxiety, parang nag-give lang siya ng voice to people with anxiety who cannot speak for themselves. Can that writer who is not actually anxious but wants to give voice to people with anxiety, do you think it is possible for that writer to write about the experience of having anxiety in an authentic way? So, yun lang, dalawang questions. And my final, siguro last lang na masasabi ko, parang another thing that I really really appreciate about this is yung hindi siya may tendency kasi yung Pilipino na maging melodramatic. Hindi siya masyadong ganon. It's not like that. It's actually may sense ng pag-intellectualize pa rin ng problema. Siguro kasi the persona is yun din yung sensibility niya. He tries to make sense of things. Hindi yung nagpapadrown siya sa melodrama. So, those are my contributions to this discussion. Congrats, Adrian. I really enjoyed your collection. I think it's an important work. Kailangan talagang may nagsusulat ng mga ganito. Thank you.
Po, Sir Jimmy, si Ma'am Luna po ang may sasabihin kasunod.
Okay, Luna, it's your turn.
Ay, salamat po. Magandang umaga sa lahat. Magandang umaga, Adrian. Meron kang sinulat na dula. Ang weird, sinasabi ko ito habang nag-uusap tayo ng tungkol sa iyong tula. Na hindi mo lang alam, ginagamit ko siya sa klase, billboard, para sa pagtuturo ng dula. I love that play. Magmula nung nabasa ko siya sa isang literary journal, I think it was Tomas who published that piece. And I'm recalling that piece in the context of reading your play. I think there's a certain consistency of sensibility that I've observed in the way you write. Kasi yung sa billboard, ang cast of characters din nun, hindi ba, merong nakatingin na middle class sa isang condominium, nakatanaw siya dun sa mga manininda sa isang busy highway. Tapos naapektuhan siya dun sa nangyayari dun sa mga manininda na yon habang nasa loob siya ng kanyang condominium. In a sense, ang mga tula mo ay merong ganong sensibility, quite clear about their position as middle-class individuals. And there's an attempt to empathize with those who aren't of the same class. So, among your works, ang pinaka nagustuhan ko yung Labor Day, pero ito rin yung parang nakakapagtanong dun sa tungkulin natin bilang mga makata, poets, writers, di ba? At ano bang ibig sabihin ng sining para sa atin? At katulad ni Mary Ann, na napaka-articulate ng pagkakatanong sa'yo, yun din ang katanungan ko sa'yo Pero ang mas vivid pa para sa akin ay, hindi ba pandemya? At sinabi mo kanina, this is the most traumatic time that we've ever had. And come to think of it, every millennium, every year is traumatic as well because problems don't stop, cataclysms don't stop, dictatorships don't stop. So parang patuloy yan and hindi naman tayo nauubusan ng interesting times. So ang Makata, lagi naman niyang pinupulot ang ahensya To whom does he speak for? So, ang gusto ko pang ihabol dun sa clearness ng positionality mo, may sinabi ka kanina tungkol dun sa madness na takot ang mga tao na bansagan ito bilang stigma. A part of it is, sa tingin ko lang, opinion ko lang ito, once na na-expose mo rin ang sarili mo bilang ganon, kanya-kanya tayo ng bansag dyan Yung iba mas malupit pa, may sayad o kaya may baltik, may quite unkind kasi pag tinignan mo rin yung speaker ng mga taong nagsasabi ng ganon, sila rin mismo ganon. So in a sense, I'm trying to say na pathological ang madness din natin at no one is exempt from it. It's just that mas louder ang iba at mas ina-acknowledge nila na meron silang kabaliwan. It's just that kasama dun sa stigma yung pag sinabi mo na ikaw ay baliw sa isang lipunan na tumatanggi na sila ang baliw, parang may weird doon. Kasi pag inisip mo, ang katinuan ay hindi naman laging nasa monopolyo ito ng naglalantad na matitino sila. In fact, quite the opposite ang nakikita ko. Kung kaya, sa palagay ko, kasama rin dapat doon sa kinakampanya mo na madness ay yung awareness na kung minsan ang pinakaklaro pang mag-isip ang mga baliw. Ganun ko katapang yan ihahayag at wala akong pakialam kung nakukonfirm ng iba sa inyo ang impression na ganito ang mga may yun yung binabansagan na may sayad kasi masakit siya na yung non-inclusion sa'yo o ang hindi pagsiseryoso sa'yo dahil meron kang sinabing katinuan na binabasa bilang kabaliwan. So, sa tingin ko, bukod doon sa positionality mo bilang isang middle class poet na tumitingin, I think kahit sa pagsapi, di ba ganun ang pagtula natin kung minsan tayo'y sinasapian ng ibang persona. So, ang nakikita kong persona, hindi pa masyadong naglalaro dun sa hindi lang sa positionality as a middle class person, kundi pati dun sa gender na position at dun sa iba pang mga positions kasi hindi lang naman tayo binubuo ng ating kasarian o ng ating class. So sana mas maging malawak pa ang ganong uri ng pagtingin. Salamat, Adrian.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Luna. Our next
Sir
speaker.
Jimmy, ako naman daw, sabi.
Okay.
Comment po.
Oh.
Yan. So, Adrian, salamat sa iyong collection. At ito sa mga natuwa ko ring basahin dito sa workshop na ito. At I think, agree ko kay Vim. Yung paborito kong tula, paborito rin ni Vim. At natuwa akong binasa niya, yung tenderness. So, it's a beautiful poem, and they have something at stake in it because it happened to me, yung ganyang klaseng eksena. Di ko lang alam kung sa inyo may nangyari rin ganyan, yung naiwan, parang nabitiwan yung kamay, bata pa, tapos di mo alam kung anong gagawin mo. So, I really like this poem. Tapos, I just have, because of that experience, meron akong konting, siguro, I don't know, maybe observation or my suggestion, so let's look at the line here, sabi mo rito, like the time you lost me in the mad rush of shoppers storming out of the department store. I was 6 and the fire alarm went off, kagad-agad you found me sitting quiet in the corner, whereas babalikan mo yung lostness, a few sentences later, you were explaining, when I got swallowed by the mob, you weren't there. I tried to grab somebody's hand. So in-explain mo the context of this, of how you got lost, but it wasn't yours. So I let go and the stampede carried me out of the store. Yung sense ko rito, yung part na you found me sitting quiet in the corner, outside the fire exit, you grabbed my hand, but you didn't double squeeze, etc. Parang yung internal tension ng poem, you gave it up immediately instead of pulling it pa. You could have extended this sense of lostness a bit more rather than I was 6 and the fire alarm went off, you found me. It was rather too abrupt and quick. Whereas, pwede mo pang na yan. I was 6 and the fire alarm went off. When I got swallowed by the mob, you weren't there. Para mas na-extend mo yung tension, this is like a spring inside the poem, that you could have sort of extended more, and I think this reflects, so I think it was premature for you to, although nanandam ko yung sense mo rin that you wanted to recapitulate, pero ang sense ko dito is that there was a rush to be found, there was a rush to be found. There was too much anxiety, in that person that you wanted to say, yeah, I was found, and then papaliwanag mo nang later on how you got lost, Pero siguro for the sake of the poem, baka it might be possible to extend that spring more, pull it, para yung nagbabasa nito, meron din maramdaman na paano ba maramdaman yung nawawala, paano ba nangyari yon? Tapos yung pagkakahanap sa kanya comes a little bit later, para lang mas powerful yung pagdating noong hug na binigay ng kanyang nanay sa kanya. So Yun lang ang tingin ko. And this might also reflect yung poet's anxiety about this state of affairs. That I can't let that guy who got lost be lost for more than a millisecond. For more than a second. Pero sa totoo lang, pwede mo sigurong i-expand pa yung bahagi na yan. So dahil siguro sa mga iba sa inyo nakaranas ng ganyan, alam niyo naman kung gaano yung stress, yung tension, yung problema kapag 4-year-old ka or 5-year-old tapos biglang yung kinahawakan mong kamay, iba na pala. It's not your mom's or it's not your lola's, and then you figure out that you're lost. So that's something that you can, I think, strengthen in this poem, which is already very beautiful. Maraming salamat.
Okay. Yeah. So next speaker, please.
It's me, Jimmy. Earphones lang ako at umangawawing pusa.
Next speaker. Who is the next speaker?
Si Jimmy.
Si Sir Roland po, Sir Jim.
Roland. Okay. Congratulations, Adrian. I think very laudable yung project mo. It's really part of the tradition of writing as advocacy, which is really the goal of writers, no? Yeah, in order to leave their mark in this lifetime or for the next generation. So I laud you with your project, and I think it's going to be a lifelong artistic or writing endeavor. So it's go brace yourself kasi marami ka pang susulatin tungkol dito sa ganitong paksa, I think. Ang nakita ko, lahat kami nakaka-relate sa poetics mo. I think the poetics of anxiety, lahat kami nakaka-relate sa quiet pandemic, pandemonium na articulate mo, no? Dahil yun din ang ramdam namin. So we share that kind of affinity, but mainly from what I think is coming from a middle class position. At least for now, nakaka-grapple pa with the mental health, although sumasadsad din. Nag-ups and downs din nung i-declare yung ECQ ulit at mag-AM ECQ ngayon na parang wala naman substantial change sa health protocols ay sumasadsad ako. At ibig sabihin hindi ako naging productive, nakatanga lang ako. At kung wala lang namang workshop ay katulad ng reality check ng tula mo, it's really filling up the time. Magsi-streaming, maghahalaman, mag-nitpick sa mga arrangements sa mesa, etc. Para pagdating ng certain hour, like 11 p.m., pwede na ako matulog. So nothing substantial except enduring. Yung languishing nga na tinaterm mo na klase. But I think it's also important kasi yung quiet pandemonium mo ay may affinity din sa malabong propesya ni Maki. A kind of paradox of the times, no? Whether it be politics or the experience of the pandemic. Ang nakikita ko ay nandun naman talaga yung positionality mo, yung binabanggit ni Luna, person with mental health concerns, etc. Pero hindi ko pa lubos na, although may bits and pieces, na tungkol sa mental depression sa mga tula mo, hindi pa siya nagko-cohere para sa akin na as a kind of pedagogical tool to be able to inform people of the concerns for mental health, no? Kailangan siguro ma-articulate din siya in some piece na ito yung minameditate mo naman yung dahil lahat yung binabanggit mo naman, kami din nakaka-relate doon. Pero how distinguished is the position o yung positionality ng isang mental health, I don't know, ano ba term dyan, Adrian? Isang person with depression, no? Or dealing with depression. So baka kailangan medyo mas iangkla mo pa. I find your poems very erudite and it bears a kind of lightness which belies the content and the project, no? Mabigat yung proyekto, pero the manner in which the poem is constructed ay magaan. At at parang nakalutang. So hindi mo nararamdaman gaano yung kabigatan. So at medyo it takes a kind of maturity to be able to engage in that, no? Ang drawback lang sa akin ng mga tula, may pagka-declarative sa instead of insightful sa especially with the last section sa mga tula or even the last line, no? Ibig sabihin sinasabi na yung yung point rather than like lyrical poetry ay naka-embed yung insight na gusto mo. So baka naman may iba kang tula na mas insightful or yung pagkatapos basahin rather than lalo na yun sa yung tenderness na binabanggit na I find it very declarative din tungkol sa paghawak ulit ng kamay, no? So baka in other words baka menuness naman talaga itong project mo. Kasi mahirap gawin yung to be able to write from a positionality na there's a kind of eruditeness in the writing, especially of poetry, no? In this trying times, no? Binabanggit nga ni Neil na after Auschwitz, why bother even writing poetry, no? So parang ganun din. At marami sa atin ay parang ilan lang din dito sa cohort ang nagsusulat directly about the pandemic. Parang dalawa lang kayo ni Edward so far ang tumalakay nitong pandemic issue head-on, no? So very laudable din yung ganung klase writing amidst or writing in the thick of things, no? Na hindi pa nare-resolve at wala pang herd mentality, no vaccine in sight forthcoming to create that kind of mentality at puro tuwing may spiking ay puro ECQ, lockdown, curfew at liquor ban ang ni-impose ng gobyernong ito, no? So in other words, kung long haul ito, how might you be able to tease it out more in terms of also kind of chronicling the stages in which you experience the pandemic, no? Ibig sabihin, yung mga tula naman na mas sayo kaysa yung mas distantiated, although nandun din ka rin naman sa mga aso at sa mga memory mo about yung nawala sa department store, etc. I think that would be also a kind of concrete way in which the advocacy project might take more kind of purposive direction. Kasi i-articulate mo lang siguro yung poetics mo ulit dun sa introduction mo. And that it is up to the reader to unearth a kind of understanding of depression, no? Pero it might come in handy also if the poems itself, some of them, directly articulate itong mga symptoms, itong mga yung iba't ibang registers ng pagdanas natin sa pandemic na nagla-language tayo at yung language naman na yan ay hindi pare-pareho over a period of nearly 2 years, no? So baka pwedeng medyo i-schematize mo rin yung proyekto mo para mas comprehensive siya at mahagip din yung contours of depression na klase. Pero tandaan mo, kahit matagal ito ay writers write during the best of times and in the worst of times. So and certainly I feel that this is one of the worst of times kahit naman forever and tyranny at ang injustices at greed ng 1%. Pero ang sa akin ay iba itong pandemic na to. Talagang parang lahat tayo apektado talaga eh. Hindi katulad ng tyranny. Halimbawa, no? So at yung ganong klase ng pagka-apekto sa atin, tagos sa buto. At kailangan natin i-navigate on an everyday life. So I hope you succeed with completing the manuscript and getting it published soon, and adding on more poems that provide that kind of depth or scope to the advocacy you want to undertake, at least for the first for this project. No? I'm sure many more will come down the line. At all the best to you. At kung may maitutulong ako, just email. Salamat.
Ito po si Jun Reyes po, Sir Jimmy, ay nasa pila natin.
Okay, June, it's your
Hello Jimmy, sa inyong lahat. Yung hindi ako gaanong magko-comment sa tula kasi okay naman yun eh. And I find it sane. I find it cool. No? Kasi naiisip mo pa lahat eh. Mas gusto kong mag-focus doon sa poetics. Kasi Jimmy, unahan ko na agad dito ng mea culpa. Kasi nung last year, hindi ako makasulat. Hindi ako makatulog. Tinanggal ko yung sarili ko sa FB. Ang sama ko. Lagi akong nagagalit. In fact, naalala ko last year, sinumpong ako sa middle ng workshop na to. Na nung na-realize ko lang, noong later. Kaya ang isang positive pala, pagka yung wala ka sa sarili mo, ang madi-discover mong una, maraming mabait na tao. Dahil imagine kung pinapatulang ka ng lahat ng kinagagalitan mo, hindi ka naman inaano, basta lang sinusumpong ka, basta masama yung foul ang mood mo. Tapos kinagagalitan mo yung halimbawa yung katulong na napaka-loyal sa amin, kagagalitan ko. Hindi naman ako inaano, loyalist ko nga yun eh. Yun nga mula magulang niya hanggang anak niya nasa amin na. Yung ganong kasama. And yet, yung naaalala ko yung Renaissance umunlad yun kasi yung may pandemic kaya yung mga artist naging scientist. Kaya yung anatomy na discover na yung mga pintor nag-opera. Ano yung nasa loob, baka makita yung cause ng pandemya na to. Yung paghahanap ng alternative, siguro mas yung pa yung natutunan ko eh. Nung hindi ako makasulat, anong gagawin ko? Nawawala yung notes ko. Mark, yung nung hindi ako makasulat, ano yung na-discover ko? Iba. Yung aking art, gumanda. Siyempre, nung ginagawa ko, hindi ko alam na maganda. Nabago. So, yung lahat ng galit ko, yung lahat ng frustration ko, nagkaroon ng expression. So, ngayon pag tinitignan ko, after all, hindi rin naman pala masama na yung pinagdadaanan mo. Kasi yung nag-aanap ka lang ng alternative ang isa pa nakabalik sa akin is sculpture. So ibig sabihin yung mga bulok na kahoy, ginawa ko siyang art. Yung una kong nagawa yung Prometheus Inbound na gawa sa Nara. Na na hindi ko naman habang buhay na andi diyan yung mga yan hindi ko naman iniintindi. Pero yung siguro, let's call it madness, could also be inspiration. Hanggang nagsi-self-destruct ako, hindi ako aware na nagki-create ako ng iba. Yun nga pagtatanim, gulay-gulay lang yung gusto kong makita kasi nakakatuwa pagka yung gulay mo may bulaklak. Yung bulaklak unti-unti nagiging bunga. Ang sarap ng pakiramdam. But then, just like you, middle class din ako. Literal yung self-destruction ko sa pagpa-positivize ko ay nag-construct ako. So nagpagawa ako sa loob ng 2 taon ng ibang building. Na ayoko siyang tapusin. Na ngayon ay pag tinitignan ko, ang daming mali. Kasi nung ginagawa ko, hindi ko naman nakikita yung aesthetics nun basta ang gusto ko lang ay mag-create. Nung din, Mark, nung panahon na yon, alam mo, ang bobo ko, hindi ako makasulat. Pinipilit kong magbasa, hindi ko maintindihan. Kahit nung workshop last year, Jimmy, di ba, ang bobo-bobo ko looking back, positive naman pala. And then I discover I have friends. And then I discover na meron akong mga masasandalan. Noong height of madness, yung akin last will, pinadala ko kay Eros Atalia. Worst case scenario, ito yung gawin mo. Tapos, magtutropa kami. Si Eric naman, yung niyaya akong inuman, no? Online. Saka si Ron Factory rin. So siguro ang ibig ko sabihin, Mark, yung depression kasi pag hindi naman pagka yung clinical lang, alam naman yan ng mga it is a cycle. It is a cycle. Yung gamot calculated yun eh. Hanggang iniinom mo nun, pinatutulog ka lang nun eh. And by the time, mga 2 months, pagka kalmado ka na, akala mo gumaling ka. So hindi naman eh. So in the end siguro, for all you know, blessing in disguise nga yan eh. Na actually kanina nung nagdi-discuss ka ng poetics mo, lumayo ako eh. Naghanap ako ng makukut-kut dun sa baba. No, sabi ayoko na naman yan. Yung mga binasa ko na hindi ko na natapos kasi yung self-cure eh. Yung binasa ko ulit yung Madness and Civilization. Then I feel good na yung creativity at saka yung madness magkamag-anak. Kaya Foucault, Madness in the Cinema, ayoko. Kasi yung violent yung kanyang expression. Yung Madness and Capitalism, naumpisahan ko, alam mo, ang hindi ko mahipo-hipo, capitalism and suicide. Pag nakita ko siya, ibabaong ko siya, tatago ko. Knowing isang araw, mahaharap ko rin to. And then, Mark, dami pa nating isusulat.
Okay.
Si Vix po, Sir Jimmy, ang nasa pila natin.
All right. Right on. Sige.
Hello. Thank you, Sir Jimmy and Sir Vlad. Good morning. And thank you, Adrian, for your collection. Again, I like what others said, this is a laudable project. Definitely yung sa anxiety. And I think I mentioned also in chat na actually may compare lang ako na 2 poems in the collection na feeling ko kasi nga magkasunod sila, and then of course they both start with the word reality. So this will be brief naman, but I just wanted to say na dun lang sa pagka-compare ng 2 poems na yon, I found that Reality Check was the more successful poem. Only because yun nga na nanggagaling nga talaga doon ako na-fascinate yung parang what does it feel like when you're about to have a panic attack or you're anxious about something, and yung ganun na na-articulate mo siya through concrete ways, na through an image where the world is shaking. It felt like yung parang feeling mo nahulog, yung mga ganun, yung parang feeling mo nahulog ka sa kama pero hindi naman talaga nahulog, or parang yan yung earthquake and I felt that it was very strong. And then siguro yung sa ganon, parang you already have it eh. You have, let's say, a strong metaphor, a strong image there to liken the experience. Ang parang sususugan ko siguro yung kay Sir Bome na pwede mo siyang i-extend pa na parang minsan kasi nandoon na yung sa energy, tapos biglang at the end, parang bumabalik sa prose or bumabalik dun sa parang kasalukuyan na when now you talk about the mother and then you go back to the peace lily. Which is again parang trying to metaphorize it, yung sa plants naman, parang yung experience ay dito ko hinuhugot, parang objective correlative din in a way na I'm not gonna say that this is what I'm feeling, but just by describing this object, na papakita ko na sa inyo yun. So may mga ganun ka na dito, Adrian, na feeling ko kayang-kayang ipalawak pa para mas ramdam na ramdam talaga. Ako bilang mambabasa kasi parang ganun din yung hinahanap ko na para ako din mismo maramdaman ko yung sinasabi ng persona. And then yun nga, i-compare ko siya doon sa yung occasional poem mo or yung event poem mo na based on the news, yung dun nga sa police, yung mag-ina na pinatay ng police kamakailan. So I wanted to talk about that because napansin ko dun sa project mo, the other part of it is really to talk about these current events and things that are happening. Again, kaya ako rin siya iko-commentan kasi nga parang ganun din may overlap sa ganyang proyekto na parang paano mo nga ba ipo-poeticize or parang dapat nga ba ipo-poeticize pa yung mga ganitong bagay, no? And of course, the shorthand answer to that would be, oo, no, parang ano rin naman, fair naman, kailangan naman din talagang pag-usapan yan sa ibang paraan. So, I guess, building on that, yun nga yun, parang what is here that we cannot find in the news already? And meron naman, no, may pagtatangka na describe nung experience na wala doon sa news report. Like, kunwari, yung sa third stanza ng reality show, si father, si police, no, na pumatay nga dun sa mag-ina, meron siyang parang voice steady like stone simmering under the sun. So, inisip ko, ayan, meron may simile dito, no, na meron pang alliteration and all these. Pero, inisip ko din at the same time, parang bakit siya lang yung meron, tas yung ibang characters doon sa narrative na yon wala. So siguro yung mga ganong parang itatry natin to be more parang mindful of, parang are we giving him more parang mas inaangat ba natin siya kasi nililyricize natin siya or pinupoeticize natin tong character na to. Tapos yung parang yung sentiment dun sa throughout, na gets ko to kasi irony, poem of irony to, na parang tingnan mo to, no, ganito yung pakiramdam ng mga tao. Titingnan tong balitang to, ma-horrify, magre-rage online at kung ano-ano. And yet, at the very end, babalik lang sa TikTok, no? Appreciate ko yun kasi totoo naman, no? Ganun talaga yung nangyayari. Pero at the same time, ako din, inisip ko to, parang iisipin ko kung ano ba yung gusto kong maging take away din ni reader. Parang am I endorsing na okay lang na ganyan, no? Okay lang na, ganun talaga yung buhay eh. Parang may pinapanood tayo na ganito ngayon, parang reality show siya. Tapos in the end, babalik din naman tayo sa kanya-kanyang buhay or mag-escapism tayo via TikTok to drain the tragedy out, ganyan. Pero hanggang doon na lang ba? Parang, and I'm not saying na kailangan may call to action dito or na kailangan mas pumanig doon sa, sa mag-ina. Hindi naman ganun kadali, parang that would be too easy too. But I guess, a more nuanced approach na parang hindi tayo maiiwan dun sa sige, TikTok na lang tayo sa huli, parang ganon. So yun naman dun sa dalawang yun. And pero ayun nga, no, na katulad ng sabi ng iba, na-excite ako kung saan pa papunta yung mga iba mong tulayan. You said you already have those poems also in your collection. So feeling ko naman kung meron ganon ding balance dun sa iba, and especially if you talk about current events, baka naman makarry nun. Para ito lang yung tula na parang sa lang, no? Give up na ako. So ironic lang, bahala na, mag-TikTok na lang sa huli yung parang gusto ng mambabasa or hindi, yung persona, ganun lang talaga siya. May pagkaan na siya, parang pinagagalitan niya yung mga ganun mag-isip. Pero baka dun sa iba, merong ibang approach din na pwedeng gawin. But again, thank you and sorry nag-overtime na ako sa sinasabi ko. Salamat, Adrian, sa iyong collection.
Okay. Yeah.
Sir Jimmy, si Ma'am Jing daw po, habol lang pa. One last comment po.
Okay, Jing. Sige, Jing. Ay.
Nakamute pa po yata, Ma'am Jing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to say much. I'm not a poet, so I won't presume to comment on the poems. I just want to compliment you, Adrian, on your essay. It's very well written. It could stand by itself, even if it did not accompany a collection of poems. You know, the phrases like, there has always been a sense of turmoil lurking inside me, like little bombs floating in my blood, waiting to explode. They're very moving and very, very precise images. I noted that you said, I'm not so much interested in exploring the notion of pandemonium in the anarchic sense, but more in the quieter kind, in our inner pandemonium, contained, restrained, the bedlam running and simmering in our blood. I think it's clear from your poetics that you wanted an understated, restrained, quiet kind of poetry, and I think you achieved that amazingly well. Thank you.
Okay na po, Sir Jimmy. Kanya ba tayo mag-wrap up?
Okay. Actually, ako bang pwede magsalita? Actually, my favorite poem is the last poem, tenderness. You know, I think regarding the entire collection of the poems that we have, I think the challenge for our friend Adrian is the work of language. No? In other words, um I wonder if we can parang uh, I'm not saying that it's prosaic, yeah, but you know the challenge is the use of ordinary, simple words in poetry. That's the challenge, Adrian. Uh, um, y- but but you know how to give your poem form or structure. You know, for example, uh, the most important words in the poem are the following: I am a lost and found story. That's one. The other one is middle of the road. And the other important word is waiting. Yung wait, that connects with middle of the road. Yun ang mga understatement. No, I think you know how to handle the language. No, but only work of language is required. More work of language. I don't know exactly how that is to be done, but the work of imagination is there. There is harmony. When you are 5 year old, and then you are 6 year old, and then today. You know, there are three parts. You know, and then that waiting at the end. Yeah, and of course the holding hands. Yun, dalawang klase, hindi ba? Uh, 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 I place my faith in tenderness. That sums it all up. But are you still lost and found story at the end of the poem? Uh, I suppose not, because you at the end it says, I am raring to let you know, my arms are raring to let you know I'm here. There. Uh, a fellow feeling. That's what it is, no, etc. I think it is a fantastic poem. No, and if there's anything to be done with it, it's just the the right order, the right words in the right order. Yeah, you know. May I say something more? Just a little more. Uh, uh, Without language, we have no language of any. Without language, we have no knowledge in any field, whether it is the humanities, the social sciences, or the natural sciences. Without language, no knowledge. So knowledge, language is words. Now, you know what words do? The words sound our consciousness, our own individual consciousness of what is real, what is true, what is right, what is just. So, and it is, you notice, it is the imagination that makes real to the mind what the words sound. You know, by sound, I mean to fathom, to probe. You know, Adrian, you're a teacher, and you know what is important in education? It is uh, to enable our students to be able to enter into their own consciousness, to reflect, to reflect, to enter into one's own consciousness. That is why I say when we write first of all for ourselves, to know ourselves better. Yeah? We get in touch with our inward consciousness. That's when we write. Yeah, you get in touch with our inward consciousness. And then we have to have the words for what is real to our consciousness. Ganon. Oh, and our education has to uh, help our students enter into their own consciousness of what is real, what is true, what is just, what is right. Yeah. You know, if you look up the word consciousness, you will discover that the related words to consciousness is conscience, and being conscionable, being conscientious. That's consciousness. The consciousness is the self. Consciousness is the self, the psyche. Yeah. So when you say get real, that means you know yourself. That's the beginning of wisdom, hindi ba? Know thyself. Yeah. So that's what writing is all about. Yeah. But but I want to add this also. So in our imaginative work, we meet the sound. Huh? We fathom. We meet the sound. All our words, however, cry out for more light. So our quest never ends. Our quest never ends. It's good to be skeptical. And when you look up the word skeptical, it's Greek and it means thoughtful, reflective. That's what it means, skeptical. So the writer is the person who knows how to go inside himself and speak to his own soul, speak to his consciousness. Yeah, that's right. So that's why writing is difficult. Yeah, but writing is a challenge all the time. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's all that I have to say. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And I enjoy this workshop just listening. Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
Sir
Thank you, Sir
Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Sige po, ibalik na po natin sa maiksing mensahe din mula kay Adrian bago po tayo magpatuloy sa susunod na session. Congrats, Adrian. Pwede ka na magsalita.
Salamat po. Maraming salamat po sa mga nagbigay ng mga suggestions at komento sa aking mga gawa at poetics. I'll try to address some of them. Na-appreciate ko yung sinabi ni Sir Vim, no? Ang ganda ng ginawa niya na parang tinignan niya yung kabuuan nung collection ko at nahanapan niya ng kwento with the recurring images tsaka yung hugot ng bawat tula na i-connect niya. So may mga nabanggit ka, Sir Vim, na hindi ko naisip, no? At magandang insights yung mga ibinigay mo kanina. Even yung pangalan na Peter na hindi ko yun naisip pero na pick up mo. So thank you for that. Yung comments ni Marianne, thank you Marianne for your comments. Saka yung question mo about healing or shield, yung parang art or anxiety or talking about mental health. Is it healing or is it a shield, no? Sasagutin ko siya, siguro kaduktong na rin nung question ni Ma'am Luna, no, kung ano ba yung sining para sa atin. Wala akong definite na sagot dyan kung ano ba yung sining, ano ba yung function ng sining, but I'm always trying to think about what for me is art. Siguro nga, to a certain degree, it is a kind of shield for me. It is also a way to heal whatever it is that needs healing. Pwede naman siya, I think valid naman siya pareho. Pero kasi tinitignan ko siya na our definitions of art and the functions of art parang evolves over time. So sa ngayon, like yung nangyaring, yung anxiety ko, yung diagnosis ko, that happened to me. So inisip ko noon, anong gagawin ko dito? How do I deal with this? What do I have? What do I have in my capacity to deal with anxiety? No, I know that I can write, so maybe that's the way. Let's write. Baka yun yung paraan para I would be able to manage this anxiety. No, so merong selfish reasons. Feeling ko naman nagsusulat tayo or naglilikha tayo ng mga art, lagi namang merong self-interest. Hindi naman nawawala yan. But bukod doon, sa kagustuhan nating masatisfy yung ego natin, what else can we do? So for me, when that diagnosis came, anong gagawin ko dito sa impormasyon na to, sa kaalaman ko na meron akong anxiety, no? So ginamit ko siya sa, or inano ko siya sa, ginawa ko siyang subject sa thesis ko para nga mas maintindihan ko. Sinulat ko tong libro na to para may mga, baka meron din may mga pinagdadaan ng anxiety at makakonect sila. So in other words, what I'm saying is I'm really just responding to the situation that is in front of me in terms of trying to understand what the function of art is in my life. No, so later on, hindi ko alam kung ano mangyayari, baka magbago ang function ng art para sa akin. Pero para sa ngayon, ito yung kinakaharap kong suliranin. So I'm just responding to whatever is in front of me in the best way that I can. Salamat din Ma'am Luna dun sa paggamit mo ng billboard sa iyong klase. Maraming salamat po. Tsaka yung sinabi mo rin about yung paglalaro ng persona na I have to admit marami pang mga pananaw na hindi ko pa na-explore or hindi ko pa nagagamit, and I'm glad that you pointed that out dahil kailangan ko ngang i-explore pa yung iba't ibang perspective sa gawa ko. And certainly I'm gonna look into that and see how those new perspectives, other perspectives could enrich my work. So thank you, Ma'am Luna, para sa paalanan na mas lawakan pa ang pagtingin sa mundo at pagtingin sa mga gawa ko. Kay Sir Bomen, salamat din dun sa suggestion mo. It's very specific suggestion na I was hoping to get, and you gave me that, no, yung tungkol dun sa i-extend yung sense of lostness kasi nga masyado kong maagang pinigilan. So definitely I will do that when I revise the poem. So thank you, Sir Bomen. Kay Sir Roland, marami ring salamat sa sinabi mo about yun nga, writing as advocacy, tsaka yung mga suggestion mo na perhaps pwedeng magsulat ako ng mga poems naman na meron namang bigat, no? Para nga naman mas malinaw at mas maging klaro sa mga mambabasa yung messaging of mental health. I agree with you, no? Kailangan mabalanse na may mga lighter poems pero meron ding may bigat para mas klaro. At saka yung para magkaroon ng purposive direction at directly articulate the symptoms, registers, etc. Thank you for that suggestion. Malaking tulong po. Sir June, salamat at nakarelate ka dun sa experience ko sa nahihirapan ako magsulat for a time at nagawa ko naman din kahit papaano. So thank you for sharing your experience, your own experience regarding that. Vix, thank you dun sa suggestions mo about dun sa reality shows. Katulad nung nabanggit ko kay dun sa comment ni Ma'am Luna yung tungkol sa paglawak ng perspektiba, no. Hindi ko naisip yon na bakit nga ba si Nuesca lang yung may ganung description, bakit yung iba hindi. So definitely I will rework that part. So thank you for that, and I'm glad na nagustuhan mo rin yung reality check, and I'll take your advice to extend the energy of that poem. Ma'am Jing, thank you for recognizing my poetics na it's clear, and yun nga, I highlighted how I wanted things to be understated and restrained. Thank you for recognizing that. And then of course, Sir Jimmy, thank you for moderating this discussion, and thank you for everything that you said about the work of language, the use of ordinary and simple language, and the consciousness of the self. Malaking tulong po, and your words are always very inspiring. So thank you. Yung mga nag-comment po sa chat, but I'll respond to you later sa chat dahil ubos na rin ang ating oras. Again, maraming salamat po sa inyong mga komento at sa pakikinig sa aking presentasyon. Everything will be noted, and I'm sure that all of your feedback will enrich my work. So again, maraming salamat.
Pagbati at pasasalamat Sir Jimmy at Adrian. Naway matandaan ang proyekto bilang pagtatangkang maunawaan ang bigat at dusang nararanasan ng bawat isa sa panahon ng krisis at mapagbigkis tayo patungo sa pag-unawa at pag-uugnay. Ang huling workshop session ay istorya ng pagpapatuloy at pagtitimbang sa kasaysayan, hiwaga, mga halimaw at bayani. Silipin natin ang mga posibilidad sa proyektong Orphan Prize ni Joel Donato Cupcake Jacob. Gagabayan tayo ni Jose Butch Dalisay Jr. sa pagtalakay ng nobela ni Cupcake.
Okay, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Narito na tayo sa dulo ng ating workshop. Parang nakakagulat isipin na lumipas na ang isang linggo at napakaraming magandang diskusyon ng ating pinagdaanan. And I think it's a good thing that we are ending with this work of fantasy, which takes us to another kind of reality, and immersion in hyper-reality, as our featured author today likes to put it. I have to confess that this is unfamiliar territory to me, and I approach it with a bit of discomfort because of that fact. As you know, I am a hardcore realist, maybe one of the last ones, simply because I think that tangible reality is complicated and mysterious enough for me to venture elsewhere. But that again is a decision we all take individually. This is not to say that I do not appreciate fantasy and science fiction, or what today is called speculative fiction, a term I have some minor questions about, because for someone like me, all fiction is speculative. But I'm not going to quibble over terms today. I'm glad that yesterday Anna Sanchez already gave us a good theoretical overview of the field, and also of the concerns of young adult fiction. And pangungunahan ko na, Ana, aasahan ko kayo ni Eugene in particular to take the forefront of the discussion here, because you are the most qualified to deal with something like this. I also had a very brief conversation online with our author today, si Joel or si Cupcake, where I asked him if he wanted me to add anything in particular about himself, and he did say that he would rather not, so as to leave more time for the discussion of his work, and that I think is fair enough. However, because his bio that was supplied in the pack is, I think, just a bit too skimpy. I did look up a few things about him online, which I will now just read for everyone's information, para naman mas makilala natin ng kaunti pa ang ating tagapagsalita ngayong umaga. And this comes from the website of Fully Booked. All right. At babasahin ko na lang ito. Joel Donato Ching Jacob's Wing of the Locust is a fantasy novel set in pre-Hispanic Philippines that highlights the culture of indigenous Filipinos and interweaves the value of friendship and riveting action in a vibrant setting. The story offers a rich tale of Tuan, an enthusiastic boy who escapes his mundane life to become a mambabarang. But as he dives deeper to become a person who practices the applications in espionage, sabotage, and assassinations, the young apprentice is overcome by conflicting emotions that cause him to question his new life. At ito naman ang ilang fast facts about the author. Number one, Jacob's name is Cupcake. It started out as Donut from Donato, but his friends thought Cupcake would suit him more. It eventually got even shorter, and it's now just Cup. Number two, his love affair with the written word started out being a problem child. He would get into trouble in school and be sent to detention, which is an hour in the library after classes. He eventually read more than 100 books, including Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys Mysteries by the time he was 10. Number three, he once won a prayer writing contest. The first time Cup felt like he was going to be a writer was when he won a prayer writing contest. His love for speculative fiction also blossomed when he read fantasy novels such as Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and George Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. Number four, Cup left his corporate job to pursue his writing career. He did not start taking writing seriously until he was 33. Cup then left his corporate job to pursue his happiness. It took him 7 years to finally publish a book of his own. Number five, just like Tuan, he struggles with body dysmorphia. Now, body dysmorphic disorder, or BDD, is a mental health condition where a person is anxious about flaws in their appearance that are often unnoticeable to others. Cup tries to overcome his aversion to his own body through tattoos. So far, he has 14 tattoos on his body. By the way, Cup's debut work, Wing of the Locust, won the 2018 Scholastic Asian Book Awards and is also a finalist of this year's prestigious Singapore Book Awards, the winner of which will be announced on September 24, which is a month away. And before it became a book, Wing of the Locust should have been a TV series. The book started out as a pitch for a TV series starring comedian Vice Ganda, but ABS-CBN never called back. So instead of the storyline being shown on the small screen, Cup opted to publish it as a fantasy novel. And Cup's hometowns are highlighted in the book. Cup grew up in Cabuyao, Laguna, but they eventually moved to Los Baños, Laguna, which used to be part of Bai, and the former capital of Laguna, formerly Mai. The book boasts of a beautiful Philippines. Cup is a runner and hobby mountaineer. So many of the scenic landscapes were inspired by the countryside. He also traces his ancestry to Naga in Bicol. Although he has only ever been to Naga once as a tourist, he pays tribute to his roots through Banig-Banig, inspired by the serpent woman Oriol from the Ibalon. And expect to read a lot about Philippine culture in his work. Aside from the scenery, Tuan and Gilas play riddles in the story. Riddles and poetic jousts are a very important part of Philippine culture, from prehistory up to the Balagtasan, then to present-time rap battles, more commonly known as flip-tops. So this brings us to this morning's piece, which is a sequel to Wing of the Locust, titled Orphan Price, but although I saw it being referred to as the price of the orphan, so I think something is still in the air there. And we will now hear Kap talk about his poetics and his work. Sa'yo na, Kap.
Thank you, Sir Butch. That was a very flattering amount of research you did. I wanted to have a 3-sentence intro, just like I did, because I'm very awkward as a person. Okay. The voice in your mind, the language you use to talk to yourself, it's not just your voice and your language. It belongs to a degree to everyone. This is the mystery of language. It connects you to others. Others can speak with your voice. You can speak with the voice of others. And so, with an unexpected twist, we understand. That is Noah Berlatsky, a writer for Wonder Woman. So the voice of the writer really has to look for to become a successful writer is still one's own voice, because it is with one's own voice that one can represent others within their own community. We do not have but one voice. We speak with many voices. We address our parents differently, to our friends, to our pastor, to a passerby on the street. There's some multiplicity of voices in our lives, and each one is a representation of our many selves who need to get around and live on a daily basis. More important than the individual voice, we become the voice of others among others. Thus, our responsibility as a writer to find a voice is not self-serving as the individualist would insist. The best way to achieve diversity and representation is not to simulate other cultures, genders, neurodiversity, and what have you. We should give up the privilege of speaking for others. We pass the mic. There are neurodiverse writers, there are gay writers, there are Tiboli writers, there are maneuver writers. We should give up this privilege that we should be speaking for the voiceless. We should be passing the mic. As for the hyperreality within the text, when I talk about Tuan's swishy walk and limp wrist, I talk about my own being gay. When I talk about the Alipin system and the Maharlika, I talk about systemic generational poverty and the delusion of social mobility among the disillusioned middle class. Thank you.
Ayun na ba yun, Kap?
Yes.
Okay. Talagang gusto mong pag-usapan natin yung trabaho mo na mismo. So maraming salamat sa iyong pambungad na pananalita. Tumungo tayo ngayon sa mga komentaryo ng mga fellows at panelists dito. Sino ba ang mauuna? Iminungkahi ni Ana na si Charleston muna ang magsalita tungkol sa proyektong ito. At sa proyekto ng nobelista, no, I think nobody here is more prolific as a novelist than Charleston. May bago nga siyang librong, may bagong labas siyang nobela ngayon na pwede niya ring i-discuss kung gusto niya, sapagkat may mga elemento din yon na medyo fantastic, ano. Kaya Charleston, pwede bang mauna ka na? Ikaw na magsimula dito.
Maraming salamat, Butch. Anyway, nabanggit ko na, no, yung na-mention ko na yung kahapon, no? Kasi this is a sequel, no? So I think I will refer to the first, yung Wing of the Locust, no? Kasi ito naman ay binubuo pa. Yeah, when I read it, sabi ko, my first impression was it was cinematic, no? Yung pala, it was originally planned, no? Pwede pa rin siyang gawing
cinema or even other platforms, no? Parang video game na, no? Because of the at naalala ko yung my own novel, yung Banyaga, was originally a screenplay, no? Hindi rin natuloy, and then so I finally sabi ko gawin ko ng novela so I don't have to deal with all these industry jokers.
Tama.
So itong but okay, I will ano no, yung although I was impressed with yung Wingado Locus, ang ano ko is I was disappointed with the ending. Parang yun yung let down sa akin. No? Kasi parang may ano na siya memory serves, no? Then nagkita na sila doon sa bahay ni Muhen, no? The original mambabarang, no? Itong grupo na itong mga bata, no? And for me it was like the Fellowship of the Ring na to, no? Na ang setup mo, tapos I was expecting na may final action, no? Yung they would go rescue yung mga abducted, no? Kasi ito na parang yung may action before that, pero that seems to be a preparation. Everything seems to be preparing for a final big event, no? Na ito na yung pinaghandaan nila. And then dito na rin magiging mambabarang si Tuan, no? He had been reluctant kasi there's this dark side of the force, no? Na ayaw niya, no? But because of the circumstances, kailangan na niyang tanggapin yung responsibility na yun kahit na may darkness. So I was expecting that. Na okay, ito ng final na they will go and rescue the boys, or ma-abducted ng mga angat parang ito yung mga Chinese or Japanese, di ba? Yun ang reference ng mga pirata. And then it didn't happen, no? So it just ended, no? So parang let down sa akin yung ending mo na ganoon na lang na tapos na. At that point it seemed like a cop out for me. And then itong sequel mukhang dito mo ang nangyari is from what I read is that yung pamilya nung angat ay pinakawalan na lang yung mga bata, no? Or meron pa yatang silang gagawin na rescue later on siguro. And then si naman naging mambabarang na, no? Si Tuan, na wala akong nakita yung process na finally kasi ito yung kanyang coming of age. I think he has to go through that initiation na finally na yung sa yung baptism of fire or yung pagtanggap na magiging mambabarang siya. Kasi dito sa second mo, nangyari na, no? So ano nangyari kay Muhen, di ba? I think he has to parang let down yun na wala namang hindi natin nakita. Paano nga siya paano niya tinanggap yung pagiging mamabarang kasi you have to slay the father, no? May love-hate relationship doon sa kanyang master. Pero kaya ayaw niya maging mambabarang kasi nakita niya may kadiliman rin yun, no? But he has to achieve that. Kailangan maslay niya yung dito parang pagdating ng sequel nandun na mambabarang na pala siya, no? So na-miss ko yun. I think it needs that kind of yung initiation na yun, no? Parang the whole book, the whole setup was leading towards that, yung kanyang initiation, yung final na and I thought it would come with the mission to rescue those abducted pero hindi nangyari, inend mo na lang. So may anticlimactic sa akin yun, medyo let down, no? So I think it needs that kick. Although tapos na yun, no? Tapos na yung first book mo, so baka may flashback yun. Hindi ko alam yung design mo. But I think the whole thing needs that moment where itong si Tuan, who is your main character, is initiated into the dark forces yan, di ba? May power pero meron rin kadiliman. And kaya reluctant siya. Kasi responsibility yun. And then so we get to see how he handles that responsibility. So yun ang nakita ko na kailangan ng konting ano. So I don't know kung ano pa yung design mo kasi kung pahabain mo pa ito ng ganun kahaba, no? Kung ang model mo yung Fire and Ice, no, na ginawang Game of Thrones, walang mahaba pa siya. And then that's where I think the stamina comes in, no? How you can sustain the whole thing, no? Kasi how much more research can you do? Kasi we have to admit, no, yung Game of Thrones, yung Fire and Ice kasi talagang England yun na ginawa niya. Pero mahaba kasi talaga yung kasaysayan nila. No? Ito ay Southern Tagalog. No? What I read from it, it's Southern Tagalog. How much more material do you have? No? I think we have to admit na our written history at least is also much more limited than, let's say, that of England, Europe, which is a whole continent. You can go back all the way to the Vikings. No? Dito, unless i-expand mo na talaga siya, no? To cover the continent, no? Yung mainland China, India, palalawakin mo na yung scope. So, yun yung ambition na yun. And then maybe down south, no? Sa Muslim areas. Kasi may Arab ka rin dito eh, di ba? Parang may India, may character na parang either Indian yun o Arab. No? Tapos merong East Asian, no? So anyway, may East Asian si Pangren, and then yung merong ring South Asian, no? Na characters. So, yun, marami kang pwedeng i-expand pa rin. So anyway, yung mga nakabasa na nung libro, I hope you can weigh in kung what you see about its possibilities, because I think it has some initial success now, but if you want to push it further, then siguro yung design mo, where do you want it to go further? So yun na muna.
Salamat, Charles, dun sa pagbabalik tanaw mo sa unang nobela at dun sa pagsuma mo sa mga issues nitong buong proyekto. Is yung transition from the first book to this one, and what the sequel seeks to achieve. And you are seeing this in terms of a multi-volume project, possibly even extending beyond this sequel. One of the things I also picked up on from your comments, which is very interesting to me, was that marami sa atin, you myself included, may background tayo sa dula at sa pelikula, sa script writing, at dahil nga sa ang trabaho sa teatro at sa cinema ay collective, at yung manunulat doon ay isang elemento lamang, minabuti natin at a certain point na magnobela na lang kaysa magtiyaga sa pelikula para ikwento yung ating kwento. Kasi nga minsan nasasabi ko na pag nobelista ka, you are the director, scriptwriter, cinematographer, everything, set designer. Kaya it's fiction and the cinema and theater actually have a lot more to do with each other than we suspect. And of course, we also apply cinematic techniques to fiction. May mga susunod tayong magsasalita. Mauna si Eugene.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Magandang umaga, Sir Butch. Cupcake, magandang umaga. Una sa lahat, binabati kita, Cupcake, dahil sa binigyan mo ng dangal. No? Isinulong mo ang ating panitikan, no? Ating kasaysayan, no? Para sa international na mambabasa, sa palimbagan. Scholastic ay isang napakalaki, no, at pinakamalaki na palimbagan, no, ng mga aklat pambata. No. So ito, no, para lang magkaroon tayo ng konteksto, no, yung pagkakapanalo ni Cupcake at ang paglalathala ng kanyang nobela ay matagal ng proyekto, no, ng Asian Festival of Children's Content. No, napuntahan ko yung unang festival na ito, no, na ang pinakapangunahing layunin ay itanghal ang nilalamang Asyano, no, sa panitikang pambata ng Asya. No, so sa loob ng isang dekada talagang hinihikayat nito ang mga manunulat, tumutuklas sa mga manunulat at ilustrador, no, na maglimbag para sa mga Asyanong mambabasa, mga Asyanong kabataan na kadalasan, no, sa halimbawa sa Korea, Singapore, nag-i-import, no, ng mga aklat pambata mula sa US o UK halimbawa. No, at ang Scholastic, no, talagang pwede nating sisihin, no, na dahil sa Scholastic ay parang namihasa tayong tagatanggap lamang ng mga panitikan, no, mula sa kanluran. So ngayon ito yung kanilang paraan, no, para babigyan tayo ng puwang, no, na sumulat, no, para sa kabataang Asyano at sa kabataan sa daigdig. No, so napabilang na si si Cupcake, no, kina Sofia Lee at kina Catherine Torres, no, na nakapaglathala ng mga aklat pambatang, mga aklat pangkabataan na nagwagi rin sa Scholastic Asia Book Award, no, at mahuhusay, no, ang mga nobelistang ito, no. Hindi lamang ang mga nobelista kundi yung ating mga ilustrador tulad ni Aaron Assis at ni Beth Parocha, no, na kilalang-kilala sa Pilipinas pero ngayon nakikilala na, no, sa buong Asia at buong mundo. So ito ay ang aking pagbasa ay una yung pagkilala kay Cupcake na binigyan nito ng pagkakataon na makita ng mga Asyano ang kanilang sarili, ang kanilang kasaysayan, no, yung kanilang kultura sa kanilang babasahing aklat pambata. So doon pa lang panalo na ang aklat na ito, no. Yung aking mga nakikita rito ay dahil sa akin ding interest, no, sa pre-Hispanic o prehistory ng bansa natin. No, kaya pagpasensyahan mo na Cupcake, no, na medyo tumutok ako, no, sa mga pagbanggit mo ng mga halaman halimbawa o ng mga gulay, no, sa manuskritong ipinasa mo rito sa palihan. Unang-una ay, no, itong nakita ko na parang agawan base, no, itong laro, no, sa kabanata. Para agawan base ba ito, no? Kung di ako nagkakamali, no? Gusto ko lang sabihin na pwede nating balikan itong itong aklat na A Study of Philippine Games ni Meli Lopez, no, na maaring makatulong sa iyo para makahanap, no, ng mga mas katutubo pa o mas luma pang mga palaro na pwede nating itampok sa sa kabanatang ito. Gayun din nasabi mo sa sa isang bahagi, no, ng iyong nobela na pinaka-rare, no, o pambihira ang lila at asul, no. Pero sa aking pagbabasa ng halimbawa itong Flora de Filipinas, no, at yung pa mga referensya tungkol sa botanika, no, ng bansa natin, hindi totoo na na pambihira itong kulay na ito, no. Sa halip napakalaganap nga, napakakaraniwan ng halamang tinatawag na tayum o tayom, no, na ginagawang pangkulay na asul at lila, no, sa mga fabric, no, sa mga hinahabing tela, no, tinatawag ditong tinatinaan, no. At ang maganda pa rito, no, dagdag dito, ito yung ginagamit madalas sa mga habi, no, dahil meron itong amoy na nagtataboy ng mga ahas, no. So pwede mo itong magamit, no, yung no, itong karunungang ito, no. Sinasabi ng ilan na ang Flora de Filipinas ay palpak, no, maganda lang dahil sa ilustrasyon, no, ni Father Manuel Blanco, no. Pero dito sa edisyon, no, ng ikalimang edisyon na nilathala ng Vibal Foundation, naglalaman ito ng mga dagdag pang mga folklore, mga kaalamang bayan na ipinasok ni Domingo Madulid, no, isang chief botanist ng National Museum. So kung mababasa mo ito, no, marami ka pang pwedeng magamit, no, na karunungan, no, para sa iyong nobela. No, dahil hindi lamang botanista tong si Dr. Madulid, kundi isa ring mahilig sa kaalamang bayan kaugnay sa mga halaman. Nabanggit din dito yung maganda yung mga description. No? Gusto ko yung mga description ng karaniwang kinakain. Halimbawa, yung pako salad na mayroong kamatis at sibuyas. No? Nabanggit mo yung kamatis at sibuyas, naalala ko na hindi naman ito pre-Hispanic. No? Dumating ang mga halamang ito, no, dahil sa galleon trade. No? Nanggaling ito sa Mexico. No? Halimbawa, yung kamatis, no? Mamahaling bunga ito noong panahon ng Kastila. Pero pre-Hispanic, wala ito sa Pilipinas. No? Maging ang sibuyas, no? Yung bawang, totoo yan, no? Galing pa to sa Indonesia, no? Prehistoric to. Okay ako dito. Pero ang gamit mo ng bawang dito, maari mong ipalit sa nganga. No? Yung pagnanganga na napakaraming banggit sa ating mga epikong bayan. Kapag binigyan ka ng nganga, ibig sabihin ay hipagbati sa iyo, o kaya nag-aalok ng pagkakaibigan, nag-aalok ng pag-ibig, o kaya ay nagpapagaling ng may sakit, o bumubuhay ng mga patay. Sa bukwan, nasabi mo, no? Pero dito maaring yung garlic, ipalitan pa ng bawang, i-highlight pa natin yung bawang, no, sa pangalawang mong aklat. No, ang gusto ko lang sabihin dito, no, kapag nagbabasa tayo ng mga epikong bayan, maaari nating kasi wala tayong masyadong dokumento, no, ng ating prehistoric, no, na buhay. No, so kung gusto natin makita ng silip, no, sa ating nakaraan, pwede nating basahin ang mga epikong ito. No, dagdag pa rito ay ang yung bayogin, no, dito sa pagkakalarawan mo parang geisha, no, yung nagsisilbi, no, sa mga maginoo, no. Sana ay mas maging empowered, no, hindi lamang tagisilbi. Siguro sa mga susunod na kabanata bibigyan mo ito ng mas mas malakas na nakapangyarihan. No, ang bayogin kasi na kapag babasahin natin ito sa diksyonaryo, nangangahulugang baog o bakla, o kaya ay palay na matamlay mamunga. No? So, naibigan ko yung gamit mo ng mga salita, pero sana ay pigain natin yung kahulugan nito, natural na yung sinaunang kahulugan ng mga ito. Duwag, crossdresser, no, na nasa diksyonaryo, no, na tinipon ni Professor Almario, no. At nasa nasa bokabularyo. Gamit ng panahon, no. Dinadala mo kasi kami, no, at ako ay naaliw, dinala mo ako sa panahon, no, ng sinauna ng naghalipas. Tuwang-tuwa ako, no, sa pagbuo mo ng mundo, pagbuo mo ng mga lipunan, ng mapa, no. Pero kaugnay sana ng pagbuo ng lugar ay ang pagbuo din ng panahon, no. Paano tayo magpapanahon? Paano sinusukat ng mga katutubo ang panahon na hindi nakaugat, no, sa Western na paniniwala? Dito nabanggit mo yung mga buwan, siglo, taon. Gusto ko naipakita mo naman ito. Sinabi mo na 10 tag-init na ang nakaraan. Pero naghahanap pa rin ako, no, ng mga ng mga salita. Maaring mag-imbento ka ng mga salita na tumutukoy sa mga panahon. Halimbawa, 1 siglo na ang nakaraan, maaring gamitin mo, no, noong malaking baha nung nakaraan, o daluyong ng nakaraan, o yung dumating yung balang, no, nung nakaraan. No? At ang wikang Tagalog ay maraming mga bokabularyo tungkol sa panahon, no, yung hating gabi, buwan, particular ito yung hampastikin, no, yung araw ilagpas na sa kawayan, no, yung sikat ng araw, no. So pwede meron dito merong saliksik dito si Dr. Ambrosio. Dalawa na lang, no. Yung sinasabi mo na ang kasamaan o yung masamang mangyayari ay darating ng 3 sa 3-luhan. No, napaka-western nun. No, maari sigurong mag-isip ka pa ng ng hindi western yung ugat, no, ng ating ng iyong nobela. Dagdag pa, no, naibigan ko, no, humahanga ako, no, sa pagpapangalan mo, no, talagang ang dami mong referensyang nagamit sa pagpapangalan. naibigan ko rin yung glosaryo para sa iyong unang aklat. Siguro kung sa pangalawang edisyon o susunod pang mga aklat mo, pwede mo na itong lagyan ng mga tuldik, no, para gabay sa mga mababasa kung paano ito babasahin. Yun lamang at maraming salamat muli pagbati sa iyo, Cupcake, no, sa iyong proyekto.
Maraming salamat, Eugene, sa idinagdag mo sa ating kaalaman. I think these are very valuable points to consider. In fact, I also had a little question about the use of the terms for time dito. At na tinukoy mo na yon. May katanungan din ako tungkol doon sa pagsulpot ng salitang wolf o lobo. Kasi meron ba tayo noon dito? Siguro naman may ibang hayop na pwedeng gamitin para doon sa espasyong yon. Patuloy tayo kay Luna.
Magandang umaga, Kap. Gagamitin ko na yung reinvention ng pangalan mo bilang reference sa iyo ngayon. Maligaya ako para sa iyong tagumpay at ang context ng aking sasabihin ay in line with that. Lubos akong sumasang-ayon dun sa vision na ipinapanukala mo sa iyong poetics na yung tungkol sa tinig, dahil kahit yung pag-declare mo ng kung ano ang tinig para sa'yo, yung voice, ay napakahalagang matandaan ng mga manunulat. Bata, matanda, veterano man o baguhan. Dahil madalas din tayong maligaw. Ako mismo ay sumasang-ayon dun sa articulation mo na yun. At very general lang tong sasabihin ko. Pero dun sa pagdidiskurso mo ng pagkain, mga laro, at ang pagtula, tuwang-tuwa ako dun sa segment, dun sa text mo, na kung saan nag-uusap ang mga tauhan tungkol sa tula, pero konektadong-konektado ito dun sa pang-araw-araw nilang buhay. Gustong-gusto ko yun kasi meron kang, kung ano yung sinasabi ni Bienvenido Lumbera sa Tagalog poetry, tungkol dun sa it's a communal activity and everyone is a poet, na isa praktika dun sa scene na yon. At aliw ako dun sa dialogue, napakagaan. Siguro taliwas dun sa panukala ni Eugene na kumbaga ay maging lubos na faithful tayo sa mga historical sources. Ako naman, I appreciated what you said was the rewriting or reimagining of a secondary world. At yung world making na yon ang dapat na pagyamanin at ikalugod natin kasi hindi madaling gawin yon. Dahil ibig sabihin, lahat ng mga paradigms na konektado dun sa world na yon must make sense. At ang isa sa mga tingin kong breakaway na ginagawa mo ay yung the paradigm of naming. Doon sa particular scene na sinasabi ko na nagpapalitan sila ng mga tula at nag-workshop actually sila ng mga linya, may bahagi doon na pinapakilala si Lixi doon sa mga tao na kausap niya at parang yung simpleng action na alam ng mga tao, inaangkin nila kung ano yung kanilang mga pangalan. Napakasimple ng gesture na yon, but it's also very telling. Ibig sabihin, lubos silang malaya in the sense na alam nila kung sino sila. Yung sumunod na na-appreciate ko rin dun sa text na binasa ko ay everyday magic na nakikita dun sa kilos ng mga tauhan. For example, anong pangalan niya? Yung merong pamaypay na hinagis niya sa hangin, tapos sinalo niya ulit. O kaya yung meron kang word na ginamit, aeration, tapos biglang may lumitaw na brown moth na ini-imagine ko na mariposa. So sa akin, natutuwa ako doon kasi palatandaan yon na hindi ka lang nagsaliksik. Translate mo kung ano ang nasaliksik mo into an imaginative manner. At lubos mong naunawaan na ang mga tauhan ay mga hindi sila kinakailangang naka-ostensive ba dun sa realism ng history at saka ng tinatawag nating pre-colonial. Pero maganda rin isa-isip natin, hindi ba, na ang malaking chunk talaga ng ating kasaysayan ay hindi nasulat. At ang mga efforts mo na i-reimagine ang panahong yon ay mahalaga kasi mukhang nakatali tayo sa palagay ko lang sa mga nababasa natin sa fiction, sa himagsikan ng 1896 at saka dun sa contemporary time. So ito, binabasag nito yung karaniwang time frame na iyon by speculating on other times and other dimensions. By the fact na pinalitan mo ang oras at pinalitan mo ang panahon kung papaano natin ito binabasa, kusang lumilitaw ang mga characters katulad ni Banig-Banig. This figure na nasa loob ng storya, yung malaking babae na actually ahas pala siya at actually Diyosa siya. Nagpapahiwatig ito ng ibang standard of beauty, ibang standard ng power, ibang standard ng being in awe of that power. So tuwing nagpapakita ka ng mga ganong likot sa teksto, tuwang-tuwa ako, and I'm looking forward to reading the whole work. Orphan Prize also poses the problem of, kasi ang parang pinaka main discourse na nakikita ko dun sa novel mo ay yung the concept of slavery and the concept of buying one's freedom dun sa nobela. Hindi ko alam kung tama ang pagkabasa ko, pero parang ito ang magiging main source ng conflict dun sa kabuuan. At dahil parang deferred pa yung actually pagiging lubos na malaya bukod dun sa pag-aangkin ng pangalan at saka ng kamalayan, excited akong malaman kung paano siya mariresolve kasi the ending matters. So maraming salamat, Kap.
Salamat din, Luna. Pansinin din natin na may mga komentaryo dito sa chat na maaring makatulong mula kay primarily mula kay Rio at kay Edward, lalong-lalo na itong comment ni Edward tungkol sa mga pangalan ng lugar na nagmula sa mga halaman. At napaka-interesante nitong comment ni Edward. Basahin nyo na lamang at tutuloy muna tayo kay, sino ba ang susunod? Si Arlo.
Salamat, Sir Butch. So una, pagbati, Cupcake. Sa akin, mas yung komento ko ay mas tanong, no? Particular, gusto ko sanang itanong kung ano yung proseso at motibasyon sa likod ng pagbibigay ng pangalan ng mga tauhan. No? Tinatanong ko ito sapagkat halimbawa, yung pangunahing tauhan, si Tuan, nung sinusubukan kong basahin itong CP na to at sinusubukan ko simulan yung unang nobela, no, yung Wings of the Locust. No? Meron na agad akong parang conflicted na feelings kasi may bagahe, no, yung salitang Tuan, no, sa konteksto ng Timog Silangang Asya, no. Kung sa wikang Malay, alam natin na ibig sabihin ng Tuan ay honorific siya, no, para sa isang mas nakatataas na tao, particularly isang foreign na person or basically its master, no. At the same time, ginagamit rin yung Tuan para bilang pantukoy para sa mga taong ginagalang mo. So iniisip ko, ginagamit ba halimbawa yung Tuan dahil si Tuan bilang tauhan dito sa nobelang ito ay naging mambabarang na isang kagalang-galang o respectable na person sa konteksto ng lipunan na o mundo na iyong binubuo. Pero at the same time, may negative rin siyang connotations, no? Dahil sa konteksto ng Malay world, no, ang Tuan ay ginagamit na honorific para sa mga white colonizers, particularly Dutch colonizers. No? Yung isa pang aspect ng Tuan, yung Tuan ay isa pinaka-common na pangalan sa Vietnam. No? So isa pang aspect ng Timog Silangang Asya. No? So, tulad ng Nguyen, no? Tuan rin ang isa sa mga pinaka-common na name sa Vietnam. So iniisip ko, conscious, parang gusto ko lang malaman kung ano yung pinagdaan ng proseso kasi personally nakakaapekto sa akin yun sa parang makakaapekto yun kung paano ko titignan yung buong serye ng mga nobela kasi hindi lang naman yata to 2 nobela, di ba? Maraming nobela to, di ba? Tama ba, Kap? Hindi lang naman, di ba? 3, di ba? So kung trilohiya ito, parang sa akin yung maliit na detalye na yun, nakaaapekto siya kung paano ko i-view yung buong trilohiya. Lalo't higit sumasalok itong iyong proyekto sa hindi lamang sa kultura ng pre-Hispanic Philippines kundi sa kultura ng Timog Silangang Asya. At sa akin, malaking bagay yun. So hindi mo naman kailangan sagutin yan. Pwedeng mamaya kasi marami pang magsasalita. So iniharap ko lang. Ayun.
Maraming salamat, Arlo. Si Marian naman.
Good morning, everyone. Congrats, Cupcake. Nag-enjoy ako sa pagbabasa at parang masama yung loob ko sa sarili ko kasi hindi ako magaling sa time management. Hindi ko napagtuunan ng pansin na talagang karirin ko na magkaroon ng time na magbasa ng Wing of the Locust. So feeling ko yung enjoyment ko nitong draft na sinadmit ni Cup for the workshop, parang ako rin yung may kasalanan kung bakit medyo magiging narrow yung pag-process ko nitong draft niya. Pero meron pang time at mag-uusap pa naman tayo. So, I was really struck by what you said in your poetics, na fantasy is not an escape from reality, but instead it's an immersion in hyper-reality. I think that's very striking kasi that's something that I never thought about before. I do read fantasy, pero in-enjoy ko lang, hindi ko siya iniisip na escapist, and syempre hindi ko siya tinitake as realist. Pero when thinking about it, lahat naman ng binabasa kong fiction, hindi ko rin naman kinakategorize as escapist or anything. Pero although I think earlier in the workshop, someone mentioned na lahat naman ng fiction may pagka-escapist. And we read fiction to some degree to escape also. Pero it's just in the moment, yung willing suspension of disbelief ba. So I really appreciate na bringing up mo yun. And my question is linked to that kasi hyper-realism na yung nabanggit mo. Is it your intention for the fantasy novel to be a prism through which we can view the world that we have now and the time that we are in now? Do you consciously do this habang nagsusulat ka? Or do you just let the text do what it will outside of what you actually do with the text as the writer of the text? So yun lang yung aking sagot. I'll be very interested to know your answer to that. And I'm really looking forward to reading The Wing of the Locust finally and the sequel. Congrats! I had a lot of fun. Congrats. Thank you, Cupcake.
Maraming salamat. Sino na ang susunod natin? Si Pipay.
Yes, sir. Kap, same kami ni Marian, no? I feel like I'm going to draw more enjoyment from revisiting this part of the manuscript when I read Wing of the Locust. And again, that's also on me. I want to do that first before I comment more on the excerpt that you've just shown us. But as an excerpt, I'd like to compliment you on, I think, your guidance of the characters. It seems like they move through a fully realized world. I also like the pacing of the actions, very easy on the eyes and easy to imagine. So I think that's what we can attribute to like the cinematic quality of it. So actually, my question is also with regard to your poetics or your process. Short comment na pwede kong maisingit ay sobrang napusuan ko yung I am correct the way I am. So, I really felt that when I really felt that when you put that into the poetics. And then second, something just in general that I've been wondering about how your storytelling has evolved since you started publishing with the foreign market. And that's something that I honestly don't know that much about at all. I was curious about maybe something very helpful that you've learned in the process of, you said here na you also won mentorship with the same person who discovered J.K. Rowling, Barry Cunningham of Chicken House Publishing. I was wondering if your experience with the foreign market has since affected something about the way you write. Is there anything different now with how you approach emplotment, characterization, from a piece of advice that you found particularly helpful or feel like has advanced your work, something that you hadn't yet learned from people within our literary scene? And are you going to take that over to Orphan Prize? That's just something that I'm curious about. That's all for me. Thank you.
Salamat, Pipa. Magandang tanong yon na maaring tugunan ni Kap mamaya. Itong aspekto ng pagsusulat para sa isang international na audience, ano? At baka nga dumami pa ang maka-breakthrough sa market na yon, although that may not be your principal objective. It's also interesting to know how that part of writing can be managed. Ang susunod na magsasalita ay si Bomen naman.
Salamat. Cupcake, pagbati sa iyong kwento at yun nga, gusto kong basahin yung nauna, para mas buo yung larawan, at siyempre, at pag natapos ito, yun din ay nais kong makita yung buong kwento. Siguro ay dugtungan ko na lang yung sinabi ni Arlo kanina. Although wala akong masyadong concern doon sa tuwan, dahil nga parang yan si Arlo Indonesian yan, hindi masyadong ginagamit doon yan. Sa kanila kasi pagka subay kang aeroplano, bapa, ibu, di ba? Para sa mga lalaki at para sa mga babae, Sa Malaysia naman ay tuwan-tuwan, puwan-puwan, ganun ang ginagamit nila. Magkaiba talaga din yung mga dialekto ng Malay, na ginagamit sa mga lugar na yan. Pero starting from that, ay gusto kong sana mag-suggest, para lang mapayaman pa yung texture. Napakayaman na texture ng iyong akda. Hindi rin ako rito sticker for historical, factuality or anything in your work. Ang siguro pwede pang sources na magagamit mo ay yung masasabi natin mas malawak na Southeast Asian. Kasi in truth, yung nation-state boundaries, they're anachronistic for this kind of work. At makikita mo naman kung magagamit mo, halimbawa, just one suggested reading if you haven't read it, yung Sejarah Melayu o yung Malay Annals, na ito yung nagsasalaysay ng pinakaunang mga yung mga sultanato ng Malacca. Ibig sabihin, inilarawan doon yung mga pamamaraan nila ng pagriritual, mga pamamalakad ng court, at marami pang mga aspects. In fact, it's quite interesting. It shows relationships with Thailand, with China, with Cambodia, etc. So makita mo talaga yung sweep of interrelations sa Southeast Asia. Also yung very close customs and rituals na may kinalaman din sa Pilipinas. So bilang pagpapayaman lamang, pagdagdag doon sa texture ng iyong work, ay hindi ito for verisimilitude, for historical verisimilitude. It's just to add to that very rich texture that it already has. Maybe you can look at some of these, let's say, kinds of literature na hindi pa dominant yung national boundaries, that still show that that there was a lot of freedom of movement, exchanges in languages and traditions and cultures in this area. So maraming salamat sa iyong obra, Cupcake. Mabuhay ka.
Salamat, Bomen. Tumungo naman tayo kay Vin.
Sir, kumusta? Pagbati kay Cupcake, parang ayaw kong palampasin itong pagkakataon nito dahil siya tagalira din. Bibihira kasi sa mga kagaya niya na nakakapagsulat ng tula at ng kwento at nakakapagsulat sa Filipino at sa Ingles, no? Kaya lang, ang problema ko, Cupcake, hindi ko nga nabasa yung una. So, pagpatawad mo kung hindi ko masyadong mabigyan ng hustisya yung aking sasabihin, no? Pero habang sinasabi ko ito, meron kasi akong proyektong ginagawa ngayon na ginawa ni Ims Demetrius, na hindi siya isang manunulat talaga, pero siya isang conceptual artist, no? Nakilala ko siya nung maglagay siya ng marker sa Philippine High School for the Arts kasi gumagawa siya ng mapa kasi nga ito yung mga parallel universes, no? Yung parallel universe na binubuo niya, no, ay pinagdudugtong yung iba't ibang bansa, no, at parang bahagi ito ng kanyang ginagawang kwento. At yun, genealogy at saka glossary ang kanyang pinagtutuunan ng pansin na hindi nangangahulugang merong kahulugan. Katunayan, parang ang itong paghamon sa realidad. Ano nga ba ang realidad? Ano nga ba ang totoo? No? Kumbaga tinitignan niya ito ng mata sa mata at kinukumpronta. No? So ito ba isa sa mga proyekto mo? Kasi yung kanina nabanggit ni Boss Arlo, tapos sinabi ni Boss Bomen yung gamit ng tuwan, ikaw ba nag-iingat doon sa paggamit mo ng halimbawa ng mga ganong pangalan, halimbawa ng tauhan? Kasi halimbawa, yung palang pinanggagalingan ng isang kadluan ay halimbawa tausog, halimbawa lang, tapos yung isa naman pala ay kagaya na sinasabi ni Edward na Austronesian, halimbawa. So kasi madalas banggitin yun ni Dr. Sus Salazar yung mga kaharian na nagdudugtong sa atin at watak-watak lang tayo ng tubig, no? So ang nakikita ko nga gusto mo bang proyektuhin dito ay yung ugnay-ugnay ng lahat samantalang tayo ay bukod-bukod, no, ng pananakop, no? Ano ba talaga yung kumbaga sa iyo yung parang pinaka malaking arko, no, na babalot sa lahat ng ginagawa mong nobela? Kasi balik sa unang tingin, uy, hindi na magkaugnay yun, pero dahil ikaw nga ay informed, no, meron kang kaalaman talaga sa kasaysayan, o kung ayaw mo mang sundan yung kasaysayan, ano yung gusto nating malaman? Ano ba itong, muli babalikan ko yung unang tanong ko noong ulang araw kay Jerking, no? Ano ba yung gusto mong tatak, Cupcake? Diba? Sa mga kwento mo, parang, and how would you like to be remembered, no, sa iyong mga sinusulat? No, so, or you defy categorization or framing, no? So siguro yun lang. Marami pa akong gustong malaman pero gusto ko muna mabasa yung una mong nobela. So pero sa puntong ito, gusto ko nang batiin ang tagumpay na nakikita ko ngayon sunod-sunod. No, kumbaga parang nung nakaraang taon, parang taon mo at ngayon taon mo na naman. So natutuwa naman ako bilang kuya mo, kuya-kuyahan. Salamat.
Salamat din, Vin. Masaya ang chikahan dito sa chat. Pero, oy Ana, asan ka ba? Magsalita ka naman at teritoryo mo ito at may proyekto ka rin medyo katulad dito kay Cupcake.
Marami raw po siyang sasabihin, sir.
Sir, sorry, may nasikaso lang po ako sa anak ko kasi unang-una, yun nga, natuwa ako, hindi ko pa, yun din may limitation din dahil nga hindi pa rin ako naka-order ng Wing of the Locust. Pero natuwa nga ako na Southern Tagalog din yung RRL na kinokolekta ko. yung parang ginagawang mga yung mga mythologies basically doon sa area. So yun, nakomento ko naman sa chat, no, na in general pag nakakabasa ako ng kwento ni Cupcake, nakakatuwa yung action, no? At ang isa nga sa mga tanong ko na natanong na ni Pipay ay Kasi ang ganda nung privilege na nagkaroon ka ng mentoring na experience, no? Dun sa dahil dun sa pagkapanalo sa contest, again, congratulations na tulad ng sabi ng lahat. So yun, I was wondering kung gaano kalaking difference nga ang nagawa nun para sa pagsusulat mo in the long run. Kumbaga na-realize mo bang mas lumilinis yung pagkatamo halimbawa ng mismong yun implotment, no, ng action, ng character, kahit ba yung wika mas natutukan mo ba? Kasi dito sa draft na ito halimbawa, hindi ko alam kung stylistic ito na idiosyncrasy, yung pag-frequent ng comma splices halimbawa, no? So hindi ko alam kung bahagi ba siya ng style mo or isa siya sa mga parang malilinis later on. Tapos yun nga, nagka-epekto ba yung mentoring na naranasan mo dun sa writing mo. So yun yung pinaka na-intriga ko about ngayon. Tapos syempre nga yung level ng research, no, na pinagdadaanan mo, nag-field work ka ba? Ganun bang level? O nangongolekta ka rin talaga ng parang RRL? So yun, no? And anything that you can share about these things sa proseso, I'm sure makakatulong sa amin, no, na proyekto rin siguro ng ganito. Pero yun nga, sa pangkalahatan, congratulations at we look forward to reading syempre the first book, yung sa mga hindi pa sa aming nakakabasa, and of course this project. Thank you.
Salamat, Ana. Isa pang maraming komentaryo dito sa gilid ay si Edward. Edward, bakisawsaw ka na rin. Asan ka na ba? Wala bang magsasalita muna?
Ako po, Sir Butch, kung okay lang po.
Okay po. Sige. Okay na okay. Tapos si Edward, ha? Sige.
Sige po. Ako naman ay humabol din sa pagbabasa nung first book ni Cupcake. Ang initial feeling lang, kasi nga hindi ko pa nabuo yung book, yung natatakot ako sa spoilers. Saka yung may feeling ka na, naku, yung hindi ko pa nga nabasa yung buo dun sa first. Tapos ito na pala yung nangyari dun sa dulo. Bilang nakasimula ng pagbabasa nung unang libro, agree ako sa sinabi ni Sir Charleston na kung ano, talagang maganda siyang i-imagine. Para siyang isang magandang episode ng isang series na gusto kong abang-abangan. At talaga napag-isipan ni Cupcake yung kung paano mo mapapanood yung bawat eksena. At sa umpisa pa lang, mag-root for ka doon kay Tuan eh. Kasi magsimula siya na ipapakita kung gaano ka-macho yung ibang kalalakihan, gaano ka-elegante sa isang banda yung mga kababaihan at yung mga papel na kailangang gampanan, at papakita agad na hindi nakakatugon si Tuan doon. Mapapatid pa nga siya at a certain point eh. Yung lalampa-lampa talaga. At darating agad yung ambang panganib at mapapakita yung potential ng bida para sa mga dambuhalang posibilidad. At yung na-appreciate ko na first chapter pa lang ang dami na nangyayari pero hindi siya loaded at nagiging kapanapanabik siya. At kailangan i-credit ang manulat para diyan. Hindi ko alam kung paano mag-respond si Cupcake doon sa pakiramdam na may mga komento kasi na dapat mas katutubo ang name choices, mas may preference doon sa mga, o kaya mas malinaw yung processing in terms of cohesiveness ba ng influences, mas katutubo ba kaysa Western, etc. na nabanggit kanina. Pero i-raise ko na sa pagbabasa ng proyekto, may pakiramdam na hindi mo kailangan mo nang isipin lahat ng iyon. Hindi ko lang kung magandang bagay yun o masama. Pero meron ng paglalapat at pagiging somehow unified nung first book pa lang doon sa first book na parang willing kang isang tabi yun hanggang sa mabuo siya. Ngayon, pagtuloy doon sa proyektong Orphan Prize at nabanggit ko kay Cupcake, mukhang sapat na ngayon kaalaman niya sa pag-set up, paghahanda, pagpapasabik sa mga tauhan, yung mga narrative device. Kaya kapag kunwari nasa konteksto lalo ng workshop, alam mo na yung halimbawa yung eksena sa agawang base, isa siyang parang alam mo yung pag may series na previously on the first season of ganitong of Tuan's Adventure. So may ganun siyang vibe na kunwari hindi ka nakabasa ng unang book, habulin natin lahat nung hindi mo pa alam dun sa unang book. para ma-appreciate mo siya. At di naman masama yun. Feeling ko matter of tasting kung gaano karami yung ibibigay mo at itatago. Pero hinaharap ko kay Cupcake para mapag-isipan niya kung may gusto pa siyang alisin o idagdag. Pero ayun nga, para sa mga tao na halimbawa nasa konteksto ng workshop, mapipick up nila yun na sinadya to para makilala mo si Tuan, ano yung kayong journey, ito yung mga nakasama niya, na yung actually pwedeng mawala, pero mukhang sadyang inilagay, pero pwede niyang assess. Sinasabi ko to kasi somehow mas crowded. Tinanong kasi ni Ana rin sa akin to kanina dun sa, hindi kami nagchat ng kami lang, pero na-bring up dun sa hindi namin chat na kamusta ba ito yung mas crowded definitely yung first chapter nitong proposed project kaysa dun sa first chapter nung Wings of the Locust. Dahil nga kasi may sinusundan siguro, pero inote din siguro ni Cupcake kung may nakapansin na mas masikip ito at gusto niyang maging mas maluwag pala yung pakiramdam sa pagbabasa, pwede niya i-reconsider yun. Pero ako nga, all for dun sa binibigay niya, maganda yung mga binibigay. Naisip ko kasi kapag may bagong series din kasi, nagpapasok ka talaga rin na maraming bagong tauhan na nakaka-disorient minsan o hindi, pero baka doon din nanggagaling si Cupcake. Yung pinapahabol ka, pasok ng bago para ma-excite ka. Hindi ko pa sigurado kung ano nga yung magiging pagtanggap ng mga tao doon, kung positibo o hindi. Kasi sa mga ganyan, minsan na sila gusto mag-focus doon sa orig characters, not much appreciative doon sa mga bagong pasok. So sa ngayon, note lang muna, Cupcake. Hindi ko lang kung paano mo rin ipoproseso. So pakilista lang muna. Yun lang po, Sir Butch. Thank you po.
Salamat, Vlad. Bago ko tawagan ulit si Cupcake para tumugon sa inyong mga tanong, makikinig muna tayo kay Edward.
Gandang umaga po. Congratulations, Cupcake. Mahusay ito. Proud ako sa iyo. Ang papel na ginampanan ni Cupcake ay katwiran, hindi ako nagkakamali. Sa Tagalog, ang katumbas nito ay justice. Yung salitang katarungan ay mula sa, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, Visayan word. So, palagay ko binigyan ni Cupcake ng katwiran, katarungan, yung pagtanaw, yung sa kasaysayan dito sa paligid ng Laguna. Kasi sa totoo lang, kung pagbabatayan mo yung bae, medyo, anong tawag din, sorry for the word, pero parang patay na bayan o hindi masyadong napapansin na bayan to. Pero kadikit ito ng UP Los Baños o ng Los Baños. In fact, marami sa lugar na, maraming institusyon na nasa loob ng BAE, like Los Baños, Science and Technology School, pero nandun siya sa BAE. Ayaw niyang tawagin ang BAE, mas gusto niya sa Los Baños. So, ibig sabihin, ganito yung pagtanaw, hindi pinapansin ng BAE, pero there was a time, malawak talaga ang BAE, pati Los Baños ay bahagi ng BAE. Walang way, si Rizal, walang way going to Calamba. You have to go to BAE and ride bangka going to Binyan or to Manila or going to other places. And in fact, sabi ko nga, dito rin malapit sa BAE, which is in Lumban, nakita yung Laguna Copper Plate, wherein makikita mo yung mga taga-Indonesia, Borneo, nakikipag-communicate, mag-transaction ng mga kalakal. Kaya hindi mo maiwasan na siguro yung palitan ng mga pangalan at kostumbre, nagsasalimbayan na to some extent, pag ginawa mo itong kwento na gaya ng sinabi ni Cupcake, talagang it's give you a picture of ano ba ang buhay ng mga Asyano, katangian ng Asyano. Yun. Maganda yung paggamit yan ng English, talagang malawak Kaya lang para sa akin, pinag-iisipan ko rin una kung maisasali niya ito sa Pilipino. Ang malaking challenge nga lang sa Pilipino, kung ginamit mo yung wikang Pilipino para tumumbas dun sa mga katutubong wika, kung paano pa ito ma-appreciate ng kontemporaryo. Kasi sa dami ng salita, kuminsan, mas kilala pa ng bagong mambabasa yung kontemporaryong salita. Pero mayaman pa dito yung mga tradisyon. In fact, nagsagawa ng cultural mapping, some coming from UPLB, pero magugulat sila. It's supposed to be about reality, paano tinitignan ng practice. May isang karanasan doon na hindi makadaan kasi puro kawayan. Sabi ng matanda, bubulungan muna natin yung kawayan para padaanin tayo. At doon tayo magsasagawa ng pagtatanong sa kabilang komunidad. So, tumahimik lahat, bumulong yung matanda. Ngayon, konti nagulat na sila. Bumuka daw yung daan at pinadaan na sila doon ng ng kawayan. So maraming ganitong practice pa diyan sa lugar nato na palagay ko pwedeng gamitin para mas maunawaan ng kasaysayan, lalo na kung mga usaping pambabarang, mambabarang. Ang pangamba ko lamang yung paglilinaw pa sino pa yung intended na mambabasa. Lalo na kung gusto natin bata, I'm not sure lang, pero parang mas bata, of course, it could the novel stand as isang mahabang nobela, or pwede ba siyang may paraan ba siya para tumindig na parang mga vignettes o novelette na ang isang medyo batang mambabasa would have that time to appreciate every segment kaysa sa susundan niya ay mahaba. Yun lang po ay mga palapalagay. Maraming salamat po.
Salamat.
Congratulations again.
Salamat, Edward. Ngayon pakinggan naman natin si Cupcake.
Ito lang, kuha ko na. Ano ba sabihin ko? Sagutin ko muna yung pinaka-controversial. Yung mga pangalan. Kasi mahirap po ako. Wala akong pera. So, nag-tuwing buwan sa US, tawag write-a-thon. Mag-pledge ka magsusulat ka, tapos maglalabas ka ng bank account. Tapos, sabihin nyo, kung magdo-donate kayo ng pera sa akin dahil wala akong pera, pwede nila maapektuhan yung story mo. So, yung mga tanong ni Arlo tungkol sa pangalan, ay dahil may nag-donate na pera, binili nila yung pangalan na yun. So, hindi sila pwede baguhin kasi binayaran nila ako. So, ganun po ako ka-cheap. So, hindi siya influensya ng Malaysia or Indonesia, wala po akong pera. Buhat siya ng write-a-thon. So, another one ay yung tukol sa wolf. Actually, kasi di ba hindi naman siya Filipino. So, ito yung character ng sa Fangren. Kita ba?
Yeah.
So, yan. So, kaya tawag sa kanya so meron namang wolf sa China. So, kaya tawag sa kanya the more cosmopolitan character calls him wolf due to the awareness of his Chinese name. What was I saying? So, Fang Ren, Wolfman. Because I dated someone named Fang Ren. Tapos I created a villain over him. So, ganun mga bagay. You get named after villain. What else? As for the scene with the pork and the onions and the garlic, I think that the correct answer to that is the answer to the same questions for Miss Anna and Pipay. Because what's more important to me is not a devotion to facts and histories, but rather rather a commitment to relatability, to verisimilitude. The current Filipino reader should be able to sit down in front of a text and say, that is my experiences. So a pako, salad, and adobo should reflect the current Filipino experience. And I am not obligated to reflect the experiences of something no one can relate to. I think that's in Sir Rio's extended essay on the reclamation rehabilitation of ng pambansang gunita. What was there is gone. It's our responsibility to rehabilitate it. And part of the current experiences revitalizes what was lost. As for the color purple, I was already talking to Padma Pani Perez. This is very similar to the response to Ma'am Layeta Bukoy's arsenic, the experience of cancer, and the experience of purple. To say that, oh, may cure naman sa cancer, and then there's the dye purple is present. It's a privileged position. These are slaves talking. Tuan, Gilas, Lixi, there are 3 slaves. So when 3 slaves talk to each other and they see, ooh, purple, diba? That's the correct response. Hindi only purple naman dati. Diba? We're talking about poor people. So when you say, oh, there's water, the water in Los Baños has cancer, okay lang yan, cure naman sa cancer. Girl, poor people can't afford cancer cures. So there, I want to discuss experiences that the present Filipino and the present Southeast Asian reader can relate to. And even if the reader can't relate to it, you know your experiences when you're reading something absolutely mystifyingly foreign, like say, the first time we read fantasy novels from the West, we respond with wow, this is amazing, or something, or this is fun. Somebody already commented on the first book, how come they measure their times in seconds and hours? Because it's gonna take so much more work to invent a narrative measured by any other means. It's simply easier to make a relatable story using relatable terms, and seconds and hours existed in the Philippines because we were already trading with the Arab nations, and they were trading with Persia, who invented the second time and the hour time anyway. So it's not a totally foreign idea. So it's about ease, and I am very excited about a lot of the comments. So the reason why Fangren doesn't exist, rather Wolf is present, it's not because wolves exist in this world, it's because wolves exist elsewhere. What else? Yes, it is what the response to I think Marianne, is that is the text a prism to represent the present? Yes. So what is the lasting impact I want to get out of this is that it's the emancipation from generational poverty. So when I talk about the Alipin system, I don't give a flying fuck about the Alipin system from 300, 400 years ago. That's over. What I want to talk about is generational poverty and how people in the present can't get out of it. So what do I want young people to get out of it? Just to escape generational poverty, the downfall of neoliberalism and capitalism, diba? Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Kap, at salamat din sa inyong lahat. Dito nagwawakas ang ating panghuling sesyon at ang ating formal workshop na rin, although meron pa tayong activity mamayang hapon. So again, thank you so much, and I will now turn this over to si Rona ba ang nandyan? Rona, may mga anunsyo kang gagawin?
Salamat po, Sir Butch. Congratulations, Cupcake, at pagbati sa lahat ng workshop fellows ng 60th UP National Writers Workshop. Abangan ang seremonya ng pagtatapos mamayang 3:30 ng hapon sa aming Facebook at YouTube page. Pansamantalang ititigil po muna ang app upang makapaghanda ang ating fellows at panelists. Kita-kits at magandang umaga sa lahat.